Let's Solve the Universe, Episode 5. Recorded November 21st, 2018. Good morning, afternoon, or evening, ladies and gentlemen of the fine internets. How are you today? I hope you're having a wonderful day and that we can make it even better with another episode of Let's Solve the Universe. In particular, it's our 5th episode. Wow. 5 episodes. 5. That's over 10 hours of content now, and we're just getting started. To all of my guests so far, thank you for sharing your time and your insights with me and the rest of the world. And to you, dear listener, thank you for sharing your ears and your mind with me and all of my guests. It is truly a privilege to be part of your journey. Just in case you didn't know, we do have our very own website where you can find complete show notes and our entire back catalog of episodes. It is located conveniently at lstupodcast.com. That is lstupodcast.com. All our social media sites are linked from the LSTU podcast page. It's one convenient place to go for all things LSTU. Without further ado, allow me to introduce your guest for today. She's been described as Sheryl Crow on acid or a female Tenacious D. One thing's for damn sure, though, she is one hell of a vocalist and an incredible musician. She's got such a unique, insightful, well-produced style. Ray Sidstern is someone who is truly an individual. I've never met anyone quite like her. A couple years ago, we met at Toastmasters, and she immediately struck me as one of the coolest people I've ever come across. Maybe it's from my territory of being somebody with cerebral palsy or somebody on the outside, but I've always gravitated towards the different people. Because they're the people who are out there being creative and pushing the limits and just being themselves. She even produces her own merch. How freaking cool is that? She brought me some too. I've got this cool hand-sculpted, hand-painted eye that's multicolored. I will put a picture of it in the show notes, and it is also photographed on social media. It was so cool to receive my first pieces of podcast studio gifts. So Ray, dude, thank you. And if you would like some of your own merch from the universe featuring Ray, or are interested in downloading or purchasing her albums, which you should be because they are epic, head over to her website, theuniversefeaturingray.com. theuniversefeaturingray.com. You can find her on all the major social media websites. Check for the handle The Universe Featuring Ray on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and SoundCloud. Of course, her website is a hub for all that and more. What more could you ask for? We talked for over 2 hours on mindfulness, spirituality, music, the music production process, and control over one's life and mind. By the time we were done, it honestly felt like we were just scratching the surface, and we had so much more to explore. Ray is going to be someone who comes back on the podcast sooner rather than later. I can tell you that for a fact. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, it is my privilege to introduce the one and only Ray Sidstern, also known as The Universe Featuring Ray. I feel like I've learned more in the last few podcasts than I ever did in school.
Wow.
In some schools that I've been to.
About different levels of things, like not only information, but also human behavior and the mind and things. Like
what makes people tick.
Ooh, cool.
What were their motivations?
Nice.
Lots of fun stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense, because even like Joe Rogan, I just feel like he's grown so much, and he's spending his days with people picking their brain about themselves in life. And like, what a great thing to be doing.
Well, he was a big inspiration for this for me.
Cool.
Do you listen to Rogan? Mm-hmm. Oh man, I love his show.
Me too.
It's
I love him. Are we doing this?
We are.
Cool.
See, this is how I ease people into it.
Peeking.
Yeah. That's how I ease people into it, is just, shooting the shit.
Yeah.
But
yeah. I watch or listen, to him, and he's super inspirational. I think he's like he's kind of like a guy who can reach a different audience with some of the, like positive things that he talks about, and human growth and evolution and stuff, where he's, reaching maybe like the, the meatheads, or like the people into like different stuff, like there's a lot of people out there that can reach different audiences that are talking about the same stuff.
Yeah. Well, he also brings in a real variety too.
Yeah.
Like you get some of the MMA fighters that he interviews, then you jump to somebody, he's had so many scientists on there. Yeah. Like Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Yeah.
That guy is incredibly intelligent. Yeah. And then you flip to somebody like Brendan Schaub, or I think that's his name, I don't know, MMA guy. Not to say that the MMA guys aren't smart, they are. Mm-hmm. But just the absolute variety that he's got on.
Yeah.
I love that. And the long form. The fact that you've got 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours sometimes.
Right.
Just to sit and talk with somebody.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can kind of get people loosened up sometimes too, like smoke or drink and stuff, and just get people comfy.
Yeah. Did you... Speaking of that you listened to their episode 1000, right?
I don't know. Was it the Elon one?
No, but oh man, that was a trip.
Yeah.
That was so funny to watch. So to watch Elon take a hit off of that, whatever that was.
Was it gigantic stogie? It was just like huge.
But it wasn't just marijuana, it was tobacco too, wasn't it?
Yeah, maybe it was a spliff.
It was something like that. I have no idea about these things.
Right. Yeah.
Like I was the guy that was always on the straight and narrow when I was in school.
Well, if it's tobacco and pot, it's, I guess, considered a spliff. That's what a lot of people call it. So it's like a mixture.
Right.
So just so you know.
Okay. Well, there you go. The more you know. I went to a Catholic school. They didn't teach us these things. Yeah. They just said if we looked at the stuff, we'd go to hell. Interesting. Yeah. But it was so fascinating to watch him go on the podcast, and then the next day the news just freaked out because he had this joint or spliff or whatever, and it was like, but Rogan has people on the podcast all the time that are drinking and smoking pot. Like, it's not that big of a deal these days.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, I can see how it is kind of like a big deal with Elon, and I feel like even in interviews he really takes his time and chooses his words like very precisely. I could be wrong, but that's kind of the only explanation I came to with why he's so like just slightly different. There's like an uncanny valley about him where I'm almost like, man, and even Joe said it to him. He's just like, are you an alien? Like, are you going to be the alien that like takes us away from here or whatever? And like, there's something so like kind of different about him in the way that he speaks. It seems like he's very intentional with the way he talks, and probably because people are hanging on to every word. Like even Joe was sitting there being like, please tell us that we're going to be okay when AI comes,
Well,
just like give us the answers.
You've got to wonder. Like you're absolutely right. Anything Elon says is going to be reported. So he's got to give the right answer. I can't imagine what kind of pressure that is.
Yeah, I agree.
The amount of pressure that guy's under every single day of his life, every single second. It's like Elon Musk said whatever.
Yeah, and he's like seemingly handling it pretty gracefully.
Yeah, he's a pretty cool character.
Seems like he's got some sort of balanced energy going on within him, and that he can seemingly be unaffected. Who knows, right? We only see the final product of, interviews and things like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, that Joe Rogan it's the long, it's not edited. It's like the long cut. So it's really good. It's really cool to see that with people.
Yeah. And the fact that people want that, like that his podcast is so popular that people are really desiring that kind of interaction.
Yeah.
So it's comforting to see.
So many things are like, refined and finished. And I think deep down we know when we see that enough that there's we know what it's like to be human and behind the scenes, and like we long for that, you know, breaking that wall and seeing who people really are. It makes us feel more human sometimes, you know?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you run into this with some of your musical performances. I know I run into it just with at places, at different speaking events that I go to, or different places that I speak at. You run into, sometimes it's difficult to get some of those speakers to break down their public persona and just go, oh, hold on, you're actually human. You know, everything's not perfect sunshine and roses. There's a little bit more going on behind the scenes.
Yeah. I think there's like, that's the purpose of the persona too, is to like maintain, you know, what you know, want to portray. I've been thinking even in music of personas. It's so interesting. Like I think that unintentionally I have like an onstage persona, and it is this part of myself that is always there, but it's free to like completely be loosened up and let go. And it's like this crazy side of myself. Like, and it's so cool to be able to just put that on then. And it's kind of useful too, so that I'm not maybe seeking crazy decisions in order to like let go of this side of myself, you know?
Right.
I was actually like reading up on, the shadow self concept by Carl Jung. I don't know if you've heard of that, but really, really interests me because it just spoke to me so much. I'm like, oh my God, yeah, I was completely unaware of the fact. Basically what it says is that, you know, we're born a feral child, like a pure wild human. And because we're like in this society, we're told, you know, what's good or bad. The duality of our consciousness is like something's good or something's bad, you know? And so when we do something and we get scolded, we're like, oh, that's bad. And we just like push that away, that side of ourselves that like naturally wants to, you know, who knows, go pinch somebody or just try something just to see what happens or whatever it might be. You know, it can be, you know, tendencies that we're told are not good, even though they're natural and part of who we are. And so we deny that they exist and, you know, kind of suppress them and put them away. And eventually they can come and, you know, affect us. Or I think sometimes alcohol is a thing that can really allow the shadow self to fully, you know, express itself or whatever, or rear its head, you know? Yeah. And so just like thinking about that, there are these different, ooh, kitty attacking my foot.
This has happened a couple times.
I let her know it was okay to attack me because it was fun, but
oh dear.
Anyways, okay. Yeah. So anyways, yeah, these sides of ourselves. And I had thought about it myself. I'm like, man, I totally deny some of this stuff. And to hear this concept really allowed me to be like, it's okay. I can accept these, you know, quote, bad qualities or things that I don't want to reveal and reveal them to myself. And then in doing that, integrate them into my everyday life, you know, or into who I am. Right. So that I'm not just pretending that they don't exist. So anyways, with like personas and stuff, it's nice to find a way to integrate them and things like that. But true, to break it down and see someone for who they really are is really, is good too. Yeah.
And difficult. It can be a very difficult thing to face your own reality and who you really are. Mm-hmm. Because sometimes that means, I know I've seen some people where that means that who you're spending time with is not going to be the same people anymore.
Right. Might mean some changes or, yeah.
Some big life changes.
Yeah, totally.
Like I see that all the time with people that have gone through Alcoholics Anonymous. Their friend group changes completely. Mm-hmm. You know, when you are no longer drinking, you don't hang out with other people that drink alcohol. Right.
And that reminds me too of like the whole like mirror concept too, because I read a lot about that stuff. And like I've been thinking a lot about how people are our mirrors. And I know that because I've got like a solid constant mirror at home that's Aussie. And it's and I can see when I go to other places and I reflect things back, you reflect off of people, right? Like they say, like the people that, you know, you don't like the qualities of, they're probably reflecting a part of your shadow self back at you and that you're in denial about. And so you project onto them that what they're doing is wrong. And so, yeah, the whole mirror aspect of stuff, if you're like with a certain group of people and you're getting reflected back, you know, like affirming what you're doing is good. And then, you discover these new things. It totally changes the reflection back,
Yeah.
All of a sudden you're seeing something that, you didn't see before.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had a lot of those over the last, I'd say, 2 years.
Yeah.
One of the ones I had was earlier. I keep having to do podcast time travel math because I'm going, when will this be published versus relative dates? The top 10 event that I was at in Toronto, I was hanging out backstage with some of the speakers, and I was dressed up in my suit and everything. And I got asked by so many people, it's like, are you speaking tonight? And I thought, well, isn't that interesting that I'm actually getting viewed under that lens now of like, oh, I've got this public persona of a speaker or something that's starting to resemble a speaker. And that the people that I've been spending a lot of time with, and I have been spending a lot of time with other, say, professional speakers. But I've also been spending a lot of time with motivational speakers or event planners or whoever else. Like the amount of time I look at the different groups I spend time with, and I spend time with a lot of different, very diverse groups.
That's so excellent.
It's so much fun.
Yeah, I feel like that's just good for the heart and the soul and the mind and the energy.
Yeah.
Just to reflect all kinds of different stuff back,
Oh, totally. I wanted to ask you, actually, you had mentioned that you've been reading Carl Jung. What else do you read?
Well.
Maybe come a little closer.
Oh, okay, yeah. I wanted to get all comfy and loungy, so there we go.
Yeah, perfect.
I literally wore my pajamas here, and I brought slippers too, but I just started a new book. I mean, I generally like to fill my mind full of just kind of consciousness stuff, things about how we work and how the mind works, and why, I do things, life hacks, stuff like that, just, ways to connect those dots. And so the last book I was reading was an Aldous Huxley book. It was called The Island, which is, that guy is got some really cool stuff going on. Heard about him through, Ozzy was listening a lot to. Ozzy's my best friend, roommate, Universe featuring Ray, partner in crime. Anyways,
generally awesome person.
Yeah, super awesome. Actually, the reason how me and you know each other is through Ozzy.
That's true.
Yeah, Ozzy was going to Toastmasters.
That's true, yeah.
And he was like, you gotta come and check it out. So he brought a couple friends in and met you and stuff. It was awesome. You still go?
Oh, yeah.
Sweet.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The club that you had visited, my home club, we just had our 60th anniversary.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah.
Crazy party or what? No,
I think, well, I wasn't there. I had to be at another event that day, but it was good times.
Cool, yeah. Great people. What a cool way to connect with people. Just being creative.
Oh, hell
and
yeah.
Speaking, sharing stories. Oh my God, I love it.
In a safe environment.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so yeah, I was listening to some Alan Watts, and then Oz got really, really big into listening to Alan Watts all the time, and we spent a lot of time talking about his ideas, and some of the people he would refer to was Aldous Huxley, and so I read The Island, and that's a really cool book. He's put out a lot of stuff like Brave New World and things like that a lot of people speak really highly of. So I'd love to get reading more of that stuff. And then I just recently started a book about the Hebrew language and its connection to the Genesis. It sounds really religious, but it's not. It's kind of more about how each letter has a arithmetic and a geometric meaning that goes into creationism and all this stuff. It's way
Whoa.
not onto what I normally read, but I looked into a couple things and I was like, okay, it's time to read this because I've heard about it for a bit, and it's a big old book. I'm on page 8 and it's been 2 days of reading it. So I just keep reading the same thing. Make sure.
What's it called?
It's called The Language That Changed the World, I think. Some big dramatic name, but by Steve Tenon.
Okay.
Yeah, so they did a bunch of studies and intuitive research into the letters and into the book of Genesis, and I'm kind of getting into sacred geometry and things like that, and so all that stuff really fascinates me. It kind of helps bridge those gaps. You know, ever since I was young, I was always like seeking answers, questioning the man. You know, I was into like that kind of music, and bands really inspired me to be curious about stuff like that.
Right. Yeah, I wanted to ask you a bit about your background and how you got into music in general. I also noticed you've got this necklace pendant on. I'm trying to find a way to describe the design. It's really funky the way it glows.
How many
in the light.
sides is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? So
Hexagon.
Yep. Yeah, and that's got a bunch of sacred geometry on it too. It's really, really amazing.
It's really intricate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, some sort of laser inscribed, very fine details. But yeah, and so it's got a lot of different, you know, symbols on there and stuff. So yeah, I've been looking more into that stuff. But like when I got into music and stuff, just kind of my background.
Yeah, your background in general, like how you got into music, how you developed. I mean, I've got a feeling our theme is going to be personas.
Cool.
I've no idea. I never go into this with a particular theme, but
themes come out.
Yeah, persona seems to be one that keeps coming up, the public versus private. But yeah, like how did you actually what was your inspiration to get into music? Like how did you get started? And let's start there. How did you get started into it?
Yeah, my first thought, like when you said that, is the music that really inspired me to want to get a guitar. Like, firstly, I'll go back before that. When I was really young, I was always like an entertainer. I've done the personality test and I'm an entertainer personality, which is great and also has its downsides, but
sure.
Like everything, right? But so yeah, I was always into entertaining. Rocky Horror Picture Show was a movie I watched when I was like far too young to watch it. I think I was like 3 years old. And I became super obsessed with it, and I watched it like over and over again. My parents were like, "Oh, is this all right?" And my mom and dad are like cool, funky people into good music. So yeah, there I'd be like super young with like, you know, pulling up like fishnet stockings and wearing a wig with stilettos just to pretend, you know, singing some of the words to the crazy songs in that movie. That movie inspired me so much because the Rocky Horror Picture Show is written by one of the actors. All the music and lyrics are written by him, and he wrote the whole movie and acted in it. It's like, oh my God, wow. What a piece of magic that, you know, one person and obviously a bunch of other people, you know, were part of it. But it's pretty impressive. So anyways, that kind of crazy avant-garde, you know, wild dream world stuff really inspired me. And so anyways, years later, I'm in school and there's like talent shows. Anytime there's a talent show, I'm like, yes, sign me up. I don't even know what I'm going to do in it yet, but I'm going to perform something. That's always the thing. And so yeah, I do every talent show. I do like some sort of crazy dance, and I spend a lot of time growing up in the basement with the door locked in front of the mirror, listening to records and just dancing and pretending I was like a superstar. That was always what I did all the time. So it's just kind of a natural flow into wanting to find the tools to make it happen. So then when I was a teenager, yeah, then I went from the basement up into my room, painted my room like black and red, and got into punk music and was playing air guitar in front of the mirror, writing lyrics all the time too, really, really crappy lyrics, but always writing. And they say that, you know, like when you start doing something, it's not necessarily good at first, but if you keep doing it, you know, I really pride myself on my lyrics now. That's my favorite thing in what I do. So it's cool to see. I go back to these books and I find these like crappy little writings and moments of magic, but a lot of just working it out as like a teenager. Yeah. And so then I was lucky. Like my family's, you know, they're not like full on everyone's a musician, but I've got a couple cousins that are really talented musicians, and then otherwise a family that loves music, you know, would do drum circles here and there. And then my mom gave me this cassette tape that she taped from my cousin and her two friends singing and playing acoustic guitar. They're doing like old Pink Floyd, Syd Barrett songs. And I listened to that every single day before school in early high school, like grade 8 and grade 9, I think. And I just became so obsessed with it. I was just like, I got to learn these songs. So my parents are super, super awesome, and they hooked me up with a guitar in high school. And then, so I did another talent show in high school, and I wrote like a song like a couple days before and performed it. and it was just me and acoustic guitar, and like people totally were shocked and they loved it. Like I was kind of in a small high school and they totally dug it. And then some guy from a band came up after and was like, "Hey, we should jam." And I was like, "Okay." And then basically from there, the Peace Leeches were created, which was a band I was in before, Universe featuring Ray. It was a 2-piece like psychedelic dance indie duo. It was really, really cool. You should check it out. The Peace Leeches.
The Peace Leeches.
Yeah, and we went on to do some pretty awesome stuff for a bit. Like we were nominated for a Toronto Independent Music Award, and we'd have big old crowds of people dancing at all our shows. It was really awesome. And yeah, the rest is kind of just, brought me to here. I did some other stuff too, but that's the long version.
Are you originally from Toronto then?
No, I grew up in Blenheim, Ontario, small town in Chatham, Kent.
Okay, yeah.
But I was born in Hamilton, lived there for a couple years.
Right.
Don't remember, but yeah. I was so happy I grew up in a small town though.
Really?
Yeah, I really, really am.
What about the small town made it work for you?
I felt like I could have an identity, and I mean, I don't really have anything to compare it to, so I don't know.
Sure.
But to think that I knew like every kid in my high school, and the type of person I am is, a social butterfly. So I was able to like know all these people and be friends with them, and it was awesome. It wasn't just like I have my small group of friends in this gigantic school of thousands of people. That's how I thought about it.
Right.
And safe, super safe. Like at night, we like owned the town. We'd walk the streets, never be scared. Parents wouldn't have to worry. Is awesome.
Yeah, that is one advantage the small towns have over the big cities, is you can go down the street and not worry at all.
Yeah. Yeah, I know some people whose like their kids take the TTC in Toronto after school, or I see kids walking home from school like on Yonge Street, and I'm just like, this is crazy. Like that would be so cool though.
But I guess when everybody does it, there is safety in numbers at that point.
I agree. And there's so many people down there all the time. It would make you that much more, I don't know, you see a lot more, you're less sheltered, you've probably, it's always good to get uncomfortable and like, have those experiences where you're just like, oh crap, I got lost, or you find your way,
Yep. That's when you grow.
Yeah.
How did you end up? So you got an award, or you were at least nominated for an award in Toronto. Mm-hmm. So take me through how that went down. Like, how did you become known? How did you spread the word enough that it reached Toronto and you got nominated for this award? Right.
That's, a great question. I sometimes think about that because now it's a different world in music and in general with the internet, right? Like, so the Peace Leeches were gaining traction in like 2009. Well, no, we put out a full length album in 2009. And so, like iTunes existed, but YouTube was relatively new, and we put like one video up on there, but it wasn't like, hey, this is what we do. This is a great thing for music. It was like, I did so little in terms of promotion and internet compared to what I'm doing now. Now it's like second nature. Back then it was like, I'm just having fun. I just like I was like 18, 19 when we put out the first record, and well, the only one actually, but so I was just having a lot of fun and doing less of the promotional stuff, but a lot of stuff came to us. Like we put out a really, really, really solid record for being so young, and it traveled on its own. Like we found some websites. Like if you Google the Peace Leeches, there's some like Russian websites that like .ru that has the CD up like for free to listen to. So somebody got their hands on it and was like, this is awesome. I'm going to make a website where people can just check it out or something. So it made its way to these places, and I didn't really know how. So people would come to us. Like we were asked to play Pride in Toronto the year that we like broke up. And that was like a dream come true for me. We didn't end up playing it, unfortunately, but people heard about us. It was cool. So I think to be honest though, I think we applied to the Toronto Independent Music Awards. Like
Sure.
A lot of that stuff you got to apply to. But aside from that, I look back at that and was like, wow, I did so little in promotion to gain the exposure that we got.
Right.
It was kind of a different time, right?
Sure. Yeah. You could basically put anything out there and get noticed at that time.
Mm-hmm.
But now, so how has the promotion game changed since between 2009 and now? It was almost 10 years when you think about it.
Yeah. Things like posters on the street aren't getting seen, nearly as much. And then with the internet, there's like algorithms, and you're like, man, if only I knew how these worked, I could work them, but otherwise sometimes, you post things and you hope that the poster gets seen,
right?
But you don't really know. And
I know
it's like a Wild West out in the cyberspace with like where stuff goes.
I can tell you how the algorithms work.
Oh, what?
Yes. I have the secret. I have the secret to how all the algorithms work.
This
You ready?
better be good.
You ready for it?
Yeah.
Here's how all the algorithms on every single site, on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, this is the one answer. Money.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
It's really all these platforms I've noticed, like in 2015 when I got my first Instagram account, I noticed that I could put up anything on there and just get insane amounts of likes, followers, just by putting stuff up there. But then Facebook went and bought the damn thing. And now it's, unless you boost it with an ad or you've already got 1 million followers anyway,
Right.
I don't get nearly the same traffic.
Yeah, same.
I've really found that.
Yeah.
And it changed sometime in the middle of 2016.
Yeah, I remember because like there was all these blogs and they were just like, tell every musician you have to make videos to be seen. You have to engage people. We have to bait people, and like it's just like, I don't know, I kind of refuse to do that because it's so transparent. It's like, hey, I'm going to tell you this really cool piece of information, but you have to watch all the stuff that you don't care about first, and then I'll tell you at the very end.
Yes.
But I mean, unless that works, but like, unless you have to say it at the end anyways. But
Yes.
I just mean like, there's things you can do, but it's like, I don't know. Sometimes I believe that good music travels. I like to believe in that. That is what I believe in. And I believe I make good music, so I can't wait to see it travel, kind of thing,
Well, you certainly do make good music. I'd say that's selling yourself short if it's just good.
Thanks. Yeah.
It's beyond that. But social media has just really changed in the last few years. It's,
so fidgety.
Yeah, no, don't worry, man. It's, Twitter. I remember being on Twitter on some of the early days, like 2008, 2009, when you could potentially be followed by almost everybody.
Right.
In the very early days of Twitter, you could actually tweet from your old phone. Like you would send a text message to the short code.
Oh, no way.
And that would be your tweet. Which was, and it had this awesome bug where my phone, when I signed up for the tweet by texting, this was like early 2009, what it would do is it would send you a notification when your stuff got retweeted or when you got a like or whatever. Mm-hmm. So really early notifications. The thing was, Twitter had a bug, or I set something up incorrectly, or who the hell knows. But it sent me every single notification from the time I had started my Twitter account to when I signed up for the tweet by text. And so for like half a day, my phone just danced across the desk, vibrating the whole time. And it filled up with text messages. I'm like, oh, how do I make this thing stop?
So you were in on Twitter like way early on.
Oh, way early on.
Oh, man, yeah.
It's like Twitter today is like night and day compared to the Twitter of old.
Right.
It's crazy to think that Twitter, services like Twitter and Facebook are over 10 years old now.
Yeah. And to think how like impactful they've been in such a short amount of time. Too,
yeah.
Like when I started watching, like when I would see, hashtag whatever on the bottom of like, I don't know, let's say 2020 or some primetime television shows or whatever. I didn't even know what hashtags were at the time. And then I thought like, how the hell is Twitter involved with this show? Like I couldn't understand why that mattered.
Yeah.
Now I'm like, oh, okay. Like I'm not a big fan of that because now all of a sudden what everybody thinks from the comfort of their home is like matters, which
yeah,
it's kind of cool, but it's kind of like intense, And
everything's got a hashtag now.
Yeah.
Absolutely everything's got a hashtag.
Yeah.
So it was, the first time I saw a hashtag on a primetime program, I was like, okay, holy crap, this is going to be big.
Yeah, yeah. And now it is. And then presidents or countries are communicating with each other through Twitter. It's like super insane. And it's just weird that the impact is so big on the receiving end, but from the sending end, you can just be like completely out of touch with how you really feel and just in the rabbit hole writing letters. You know, you can not even be paying attention to what you think or how you feel in that moment, but you're, you know, writing or reactively writing and sending. And oh my God, those send moments where you send something and it's like so permanent and like freaky. Sometimes when I send emails now, I like read it and then I read it again and they're like not even going to affect anyone anyways. I'm just like, how am I coming off? And I'm like, make sure, did I put all the things in there? And then when I press send, I'm still just kind of like, oh crap, reread it again.
Just cover all my bases.
I can't imagine if I was doing super important things, how paranoid I would be.
Oh, there's emails I've spent days crafting where it's just like, oh, I got to get this absolutely right. But when you go on Twitter, it can be real dangerous because you just have that, you can get that immediate reaction out of people.
Yeah.
Like it's not hard to craft a tweet that'll get people's attention.
Well, I think some people dedicate their life to it, truly. Or some people are just super, super like witty, because sometimes I see people, they're posting something witty 30 times in a day. And I'm just like, man, you're either like just banking these and then using them, or you're just a super witty, awesome person, like hilarious person. I just wonder, no matter how hard I try, I can't. I mean, everything can be developed, but those skills, you know?
Yeah. And it's for something like Twitter, it's like, how much do I really want to develop that skill?
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, there's better ways.
On that note, I was going to say too, that like talking about how you were kind of onto Twitter early. Sometimes I see these, you know, platforms pop up and, you know, I remember when Instagram popped up, I wasn't really interested in it, but some people get in on things early and they make it their thing. And they can just kind of like conquer it in a really great way because they started early on. And, you know, that kind of goes along with like not spreading yourself too thin, like do one thing really, really well, or, you know, and I see that in musician blogs and stuff. They're like, you know, don't have a Twitter account that you never go to because you're worried about the other ones. Just have ones that you can do really well.
Right.
Because people will check you out, you know?
Yeah. You've only got so much time in a day.
Absolutely.
It's like you do have to pick and choose your battles.
Really.
And with content, just because you can cross-post something to Twitter or Facebook doesn't mean it's a good idea.
Yeah.
Like I've seen people try and cross-post content all the time, and it just looks like crap on Twitter.
Right.
It's just like, oh, it's a link and an image.
Yeah, they haven't really like, I don't know if if that's something that they would like work on having work better, but
yeah, well, but the mediums are completely different.
Right.
Like think about the original idea of Twitter. It was microblogging. Like remember when blogging was the biggest thing in the world?
Oh yeah.
And then it was like Twitter, it's a microblogging service. Oh, okay. That's how this works. And then we got Instagram, which was like, I originally described it as Twitter with photos and an unlimited word count.
Right, right.
Because Twitter was sort of in this no man's land before Instagram came along. Mm-hmm. I feel like Twitter really took a nosedive when Instagram was developed.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
In what way?
Well, if you wanted to share images with the world, or you wanted to share videos with the world, like the really short content, Twitter was really your only destination. But it wasn't great for that because most of the services, the image link would eat into the character count.
Ah, okay.
So it was not really that great for engaging people, but it was like unless you hosted it on your own website, it was basically the only option. Then Instagram came along and all of a sudden, all that traffic of I'm sharing images or I'm in the moment or whatever it was, that was taken away from Twitter and went to this new platform.
Yeah. So you probably, I'm guessing because I've looked around this room, that you know things about computer coding?
That might be my background, yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. So you can kind of like have this extra level of you know, understanding them or interpreting them in a way that like I would not even pick up on or whatever. Just, you know.
Yeah, it is my background. I've built a lot of different platforms for people to talk on as well.
Oh, cool.
I mean, the first day that I discovered online internet chat was like the day my social life was forever screwed. Because I'm like, I can communicate with people on the other side of the world? Are you kidding me? This is awesome.
It's so cool, yeah.
Like I remember the very, very first time I got on internet chat was we had Execulink dial-up. Mm-hmm. And it was just, you could communicate with other Execulink people in Ontario. And that was just, the idea that you could talk with somebody instantly just blew my mind.
Yeah.
And then I discovered Internet Relay Chat, IRC. And that's, like, when I see hashtags now, all the channels that you would see on IRC, they all started with a hashtag, the number sign. So, it'd be like number sign text, hashtag tech support, or hashtag chat room, or whatever it was. And IRC was a curiosity for me at first, but then I discovered, like, if you go back and look at some of the internet archives, like IRC was used in the early days of the internet. When there was a media blackout during the Gulf War, reporters were using IRC to do real-time communication with the rest of the world, describing what the hell was happening on the ground.
Wow.
Yeah. Like in places where reporters simply couldn't go.
IRC being exactly like the
Internet Relay Chat.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so like a really, really early forerunner to internet
like
chat.
a box with words.
Yeah, exactly. Like Instant Messenger.
Yeah, okay.
Like
ICQ or something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was even before
super
that.
Simple. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then ICQ came around, and everybody had an ICQ number, and that was a big deal, wasn't it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I was all over that as a kid.
And AOL Instant Messenger.
Yeah, yeah.
That became cool.
Yeah, totally. I remember just like randomly chatting with people.
It's amazing we didn't get into more danger than we did.
Yeah. Oh my God. I had this friend who said that he like discovered like very simple hacking when he was young, back in like those days.
Yes.
And he like, a funny story, he said he like got this kid's whatever, I don't know, IP address, or for whatever reason ended up finding it through something I forget, but he ended up getting into his computer and like talking to him and telling him he was like a ghost that was like following him around, and this kid was like all like hooked line and sinker on this, and he totally sounds so messed, but he like kind of messed with him for a bit, and then he started feeling really bad because he was like communicating saying like, hey man, like I feel like I gotta, and he was like, no, this is a person, I've been messing with you. So
yeah, really early cyberbullying.
Oh my God, it's crazy.
God.
Like, oh, that's just so nuts. I couldn't do that, but having a friend doing it is kind of like hands clean, can enjoy it from a distance.
I remember the closest I ever came to that. I had two incidents. The closest I ever came to that was back in the early days of Wi-Fi. I had a laptop. My friend and I, we modified my laptop so that I could attach an antenna to it. And this is when people just had completely unsecured Wi-Fi hotspots.
Oh my God.
We'd go around the city, and it had a name for it. It was called war driving, where you went around and looked for open Wi-Fi hotspots and just connect to them. Yeah.
Amazing.
So we'd go around the city, connect to these different hotspots. I connect to one, and not only is the network just completely open, they've also shared their printer. Right? I can't resist.
Oh my God, yes.
I connect to their printer, and I'm like, there's no way this is going to work. There's no way this is going to work. And I typed up a simple thing like, you might want to secure your Wi-Fi. Hit print, and the thing goes through, and I'm just like, oh man. I turn to my friend, I'm like, we should probably get out of here.
Yeah, oh, that could have got so crazy. Oh man, yeah.
So yeah, it was
the power in the hands.
I know. It was those early days were kind of crazy.
Man, I think about that a lot though, about the power that lies within understanding the language of computers. Like,
oh yeah.
I believe that the future generations will know it. We're already cyborgs, like, to begin with, let alone like the younger generation growing up super connected, like interconnected, and how, coding can be taught like from a really young age. And honestly, I believe in some crazy stuff, just like bending space-time, future wildness. And I just think it's a huge asset to have. It really.
Well, I was just speaking to Daniel Carlos about that. So he was on episode 2. He took us through a guided meditation at the beginning of his episode. Cool. Have you hooked up with him yet?
I don't think so.
Okay, I got to get you two in contact. What we were talking about during his episode, he's big into virtual reality and extended reality, he calls it. Yeah. One of the topics we got talking about was this ability to have these really profound personal experiences without the use of psychedelics.
Totally.
That's what virtual reality and extended reality can give us.
Cool.
And we're just on the precipice of that.
Wow.
Like it's so early days, but
we were talking like designed experiences.
yes, like
Whoa. Like mind opening, altering designed experiences.
Yeah,
Like what psychedelics would do, but without them.
yeah, basically,
Whoa.
just having
Strap in.
Yeah, exactly. Because he was talking about doing these guided meditations in a virtual reality environment where stuff like the waterfall, there's a waterfall in the background, but it's communicating with you. The waterfall is the entity that's telling you, that's actually giving you the instructions of, just breathe in and breathe out.
You know what my issue is with that? And not really an issue, but just what comes to mind is just that imagination is such an amazing tool to have. Like our minds can create that with practice, with developing, with just attempting to do that. Like I've gone without virtual reality to other places in my mind in some, verse.
Right.
And that's not always the case when I meditate, but there's times when it's the perfect recipe where I can relax deep enough to transport, and it's not like, boom, I'm gone to this place. It's kind of like it's a journey and it's really, really cool. And anyways, I think it is important for our minds to practice imagination and practice imagining because that's how we create. And that's just, just a minor fear when it comes to relying on, what am I looking for there? Relying on not technology to imagine for us, but it's always there to tap into.
I think I see where you're going.
DMT, right, is released in our exists in most living beings, and it's our
yeah, that's a big. I mean, there's all the fun brain chemicals that get released during all these different experiences.
Yeah,
and then I mean, psychedelics can impact that, good, bad, or otherwise.
Totally. Totally.
That gets, when we start, that's an interesting idea of if we've got this technology, if we suddenly allow it to imagine for us or create these experiences for us, and we start to lose the ability to imagine that.
I wonder if we could ever lose that ability. I mean, unless everything in moderation is okay, right?
Sure.
But, right now we're relying on our phones to do all of our remembering for us. And if we lose those, then, we're going to have to tap some old wires together in our mind to try to, figure out a phone number or whatever it is. Either way, what it's replacing for us is allowing an expansion in other parts of our minds to take in other information and, grow in that way. So I see that like with the new benefits of this new technology, it expands us into experiencing greater things on another side of life. And I guess it only really affects everything when that gets taken away. Like with the virtual reality, doing things like that's super amazing. Like that can connect us to things that we would otherwise not be able to do, or could take us like hundreds of years to figure out how to do with our own imagination.
Sure.
In which case that's amazing. And everything, in balance and moderation. Like there's people that do live in virtual reality right now. I saw this documentary about technology, and there was like these rehab centers for people addicted to the internet.
Yes.
And it's super like that people were getting their legs amputated in some countries because they're not leaving their room to play like World of Warcraft or whatever it is. This is like extreme behavior. You know what I mean? That's not typical. You can enjoy that and not have to get your legs amputated. That's like for this degree of craziness possible.
I know I've heard of people who've been addicted to the internet before, but oh my God, amputating your leg because
we're all a little addicted, man, but
oh sure.
That's next level for sure.
Yeah.
There's like something else going on there,
Yeah, there's some mental health issues going on there for sure.
For sure.
I think it just turns out to be an outlet.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, thinking about those virtual reality experiences a little bit more, I do remember some days of being on, I think it's still around. There was this really super open world program called Second Life, where you could create a persona and really dive in and really have a social life in this second life. The joke, I think, back then was like, oh, you could give up your first life to have a second life.
Right.
But I remember one time I had a virtual reality headset, strapping that on, going into this virtual environment, and it was a real mind-bending experience because suddenly it was about as immersive as it got. And it was like, I am this separate person in a separate reality. And then after I was all done, taking the headset off, coming back into here, it was like, whoa, what did I just experience?
Wow, yeah.
Like this was completely surreal. Because in this other environment, I can fly around, I can make things. Like you literally, if you're in a sandboxed environment, you can go and actually create things.
Right.
That changed so much of my perception of reality.
And you're holding like a controller to create things?
In that case, I was just using keyboard and mouse.
Okay.
But yeah, for most of the new VR, like that was the early day stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
But now you have the controllers where you can grip onto things.
Like you get like little hand sensor things on your fingers, like gloves or something?
More like handheld controllers.
Okay. And that, I mean, next step is gloves, like that, because I was going to say, like, to connect where your hand's making something, like, that's what a trip for the brain. You're like, I'm getting all the gratification of making this thing, but I'm like holding on to a completely different object in my hand.
Well, then what really messed with me, probably for a good few minutes after it was done, even now just thinking about it, it's like, ooh, wow. What really messed with me was when I took the headset off and came back here, it was as if that alternative reality that I was just a part of just completely disappeared like a dream. But yet I was conscious through the whole experience. Mm-hmm. That's what was so weird about it. Mm-hmm. I've had dreams. I've experienced that dream state. Mm-hmm. I've never been on a psychedelic, so I don't know what that experience is like. But it was
dreams.
Okay. Well, there you go. But I just remember I've never had an experience where I've been fully conscious, but the reality that I experienced went away.
Whoa, yeah. That's the way to put that there. Yeah, where it's like the reality just boop switches.
Yeah. Just switches and disappears.
Yeah. And like, you're connected to the reasons why and stuff. So it's like you can wrap your head around it, but it's like that is different as far as the, perception goes and stuff.
And think about it this way. Like if you go to Toronto and say you don't go there for a year, if you go back to Toronto, it's generally going to be the same, won't it?
Yeah.
Like there might be some improvements here or there, new buildings, new
people. Be hard to notice, but yeah.
Yeah, it'd be a little bit changed. The last time I logged on to Second Life was probably 2 or 3 years ago. If I were to go back there now and check out the same places I was at, they'd probably be completely different.
Wild. Oh my God.
So who knows if what existed 2 or 3 years ago in that environment persists and continues to exist.
Right. And there's like people still currently playing that game?
Oh yeah, all the time.
Wow.
It's still a hugely popular thing.
Yeah. Well, and some people talk about how like this is a simulation. Like this reality that we're currently in is like a simulation. Could be. Which, yeah.
Like it could very well be somebody takes the headset off and suddenly this disappears for their existence.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like the higher powers, like we've all had our I was going to say psychic experiences, right? Like have you had experiences like that?
Yeah, my mind has generally been the more, I don't know, pessimistic isn't the right word. Like I've been a lot more on the skeptic/realist side of reality.
Right.
Where I've said, there is, I think part of it, was more a rebellion against being raised in a Catholic elementary and high school and just not 100% agreeing with some of the dogma that was being taught. Right. So the refuge was, at the time I discovered George Carlin and a couple of other kind of, who else was out there at that time? I want to say Bill Hicks. Yeah. Some of the counterculture comics.
Right.
and just going, yeah, they understand me. I don't, because, sorry, like for some of the teachings, it was, I don't feel that.
Yeah.
It's like what you're teaching, I don't feel that.
Yeah. And that's a key indicator of,
there's something not quite right here.
Right.
And I feel like I've mellowed out a lot more on that side, but there's some of those early influences I think persist for me anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I also think it's really arrogant for somebody to say, there is no God, there is no higher power.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, how do you know? How can you possibly know that?
Yeah, right.
We don't understand what's at the bottom of the friggin' ocean.
Yeah.
Like we don't understand what matter is made of.
Yeah, no doubt.
It's like, okay, well, everything's made up of cells. Well, what are cells made up of? Well, they're made up of strings, and there's strings theory. Well, what are the strings made up of?
Yeah, and it goes forever and ever and ever. The more we discover, the more we open up another door to be discovered. It just never ends. Like,
yeah. And this person over here is going to tell me that they know for a fact that there is no God. Are you kidding me?
It's safe. It's safe to just know that there's nothing and just stick with that. Like, but I mean, and sometimes it takes having some of those experiences that make you be like, oh no, they're like, that's crazy that happened or whatever, like, yeah, it's crazy some things to be chalked up as like to coincidence when there's just so much going on, there's so much in movement all the time, moving around in the ether, and like just, that everything is made up of the same stuff, like everything comes from this, we're made up of proteins and like all these things that connect together, it's the same as like what everything, everything's matter. But, what was I going to say about that?
Well, think about the way the human body's made. I mean, I'm going to butcher this one, but I know that there's a stat not a stat, but our cells are constantly regenerating themselves, and after what is it, like 3 months, you're basically a completely new shell of a body. Like you've regenerated everything. Mm-hmm. So it's like, okay, so every 3 months, technically speaking, you become a new person.
Right.
Physically.
Yeah. Yeah. Which like I always kind of refer to that in my mind when I think about different ways that I'm being or the way that I act, and just that like, when you're quantum physics, like when something's being observed, it affects the observer affects what is being observed or whatever. And just that, you can know somebody really, really well and then go into a new experience and be like, whoa, you didn't act like yourself. It's like, well, no, my energy was coming into contact with other energies and moving around in a crazy movement of dance. And it produced different things in me based off of what I was thinking. There's so many things going on. Like we're never the same. And that's kind of freeing, and like, it's really cool. It's really, really cool.
And there's all sorts of explanations for everything.
Yeah.
And they can fit the way that everybody thinks. Like some people might say, oh, the fact that, like, take for example, you and I meeting. Like, what are the sheer odds that you and I would meet at the same Toastmasters club, that we would end up, our choices in life leading up to that moment before we decided, oh, we're going to go to Toastmasters, that all of those events would lead to us meeting at Toastmasters.
Yeah.
Like those are some infinitesimally small odds when you think about that. Like you chart your whole life's path.
Yeah.
And then to end up at that point where we meet is like,
totally.
That's such a, but you could also explain like, oh, but those two people, they decided to go to Toastmasters and it was just sheer coincidence.
Right.
It's like, okay, that's an explanation.
Yeah, it works.
Another explanation was it's two energies that were meant to be brought together.
Yeah.
When my mother listens to this, she's going to be like, what the heck? You've never talked like this. Your mind must be super open these days. Which I think after listening to Rogan's podcast and thinking about some stuff, I think it's a little bit more open than it was.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of different explanations for what brings us together.
Yeah.
There's a lot of explanations for life in general.
Yeah. And sometimes like over the course of, sometimes 20 years go by and then you find out new information about the past that makes you realize how even more insane it was that we met, You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like you
Yeah.
come to find out, like sometimes the narrative of a story takes a full on lifetime to really see like the magic of, you know what I mean? I always think about that sometimes with stuff like, you know, working on something, or sometimes, you know, something happens and someone can be like, you know, see, I told you so, or whatever. And I mean, there's, you know, things that happen where you do at that moment see the results. And then there's other times where like another 3 years go by and you look back at those results and you're like, actually, no, that needed to happen for all this other crazy stuff to happen. Like,
Yeah.
it just never ends. And it's really, really cool. And then, you know, like sometimes Oz will talk about if you keep like tracing it back, like the people had to like die for us to be doing this right now. Like, and that sounds kind of extreme, but like if you trace back like my lineage, like my grandparents are Holocaust survivors, so there's some of the few people that got out of there.
Whoa.
And like now here I am.
Right.
Like, I happen to be like a thing now because of like all this crazy stuff. And like sometimes one person's decision, you know, like life is just full of all these crazy choices that affect it. It's all affecting everything.
Just the sheer odds that they managed to escape that and somebody else didn't.
Right.
Oof.
Yeah.
That's heavy stuff.
Yeah, totally. It's wild to think about though. You know, it's really wild it enriches like the moment, you know, those kind of things. And that choices are so powerful. We're constantly making them. They're happening all the time, completely mindlessly a lot of the time, and then sometimes very consciously. And that's kind of a goal that I try to, you know, aim towards every day, is conscious decision making. So,
right.
Because if I don't, boom, habitual crappiness sets in, you know, from childhood and from everything of just, you know, not treating my body as good or not getting good rest or all those things that kind of help.
Yeah.
You know,
keep you healthy and balanced.
Keep you healthy. Yeah. And balance is so a thing.
Yeah. It's way easier to deal with life when you're well rested and well fed than it is when you're just feeling miserable and like crap.
Feeding yourself full, consuming crappy stuff, not just food, right?
Yeah.
Consuming crappy thoughts and negative energy and things like that.
Going back to the idea of consciousness for a second and what brings people together, have you ever had the experience where you've had a dream and then sometime later on in your life, what you dreamt about plays out exactly?
Ooh, a premonition.
That's what it's called?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
You've had those?
Yeah. My goodness. Yes. But not like some crazy one, I don't think, where it's like, whoa. But just little ones. I sometimes wonder if that's kind of like what the deja vu thing is, where I'm like, how the hell have I experienced this before? Probably in some multiverse in my mind. But you know, I think it's kind of, I don't know. I've heard of people who've like met the love of their life in their dreams and then later met them in real life.
Yeah, I never had anything important like that. I just managed.
You've had premonitions?
I feel like I have. Yeah.
Cool.
I can identify like exactly 2 moments in my life where I went, oh my God, this is exactly what I dreamt about.
And you knew what was going to happen next and everything?
Like precise. Yeah.
Crazy,
like to the
man.
precise moment. And both times were in video games.
No way.
Yeah.
I love the pause there. Yeah.
Like it couldn't have been something like Apple stock or something important. It was like one of them was literally I was playing Command and Conquer Red Alert 2. And it was one of the toughest missions where you've got a whole bunch of armies flying at you at the same time, and you're completely up against it and screwed. And I was just like, oh my God, I know exactly. It wasn't I know the patterns of the enemy, so I know what they're going to do. It was, I dreamt about this, and when I dreamt about this, I did the following, and then I did exactly that, and it worked out exactly the way as I dreamt it.
Right, and you had never seen that part before.
And then, and here's the next bit. The dream had happened at least 2 or 3 years prior, way before I'd even heard of this game. In fact, way before it had even been released.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa, that's
right?
So cool.
And
time travel.
Yeah, or something. I have no idea.
Well, like if this is linear, right? Like we're in like this space-time, which is linear, but space-time, so there's like an order to it from, it moves forward.
Sure.
But then in not linear space-time, there is no 2 years ago. There's no future. There's just what I consider dreams and that place that we go to. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's kind of crazy, but and I'm I just reiterate, some of the things I learned, and sometimes I'm like, ew, I'm not saying it right, so this is not like full on, but anyways, that's so cool. That makes sense to me. I got some dream stories because like my mom and my sister, they are always telling me about their wild dreams, and the crazy part about it is that when they wake up into this shared dream,
right.
but our current reality that we agree on, and then when they go to bed, they wake up exactly where they left off. They're living two lives that are moving in a linear pattern, and it's the same places. It's the same people. It's like, for instance, my mom would say that like if she goes to bed, if she wakes up from her dream and she didn't do the dishes, she goes back the next day, those same dishes are there. Talk about bang your head against the wall. Like, at least dreams can be like a place to escape where you don't have to do dishes. But like,
that is funky.
That's super crazy, right? And so, the same things kind of keep going on in them. My sister's like, man, it's literally like Groundhog Day.
Yeah. Wow.
It's
oh my
super
God.
wild. And I think they might even and then they were on the phone the other day. My sister was telling me about her dream. And then she was just like, yeah, and there's like this convenience store. It's like my convenience store I always go to, and the same guy's always there. And my mom was like, I got a convenience store too. She's like, and there's always the same guy there. And they were like, what if it's the same one? Like they could just be like tuning into this frequency that exists. Like,
yeah. And we have no idea. Maybe that is exactly what's going on.
Maybe, yeah.
Like I can hear a million of my skeptic friends going, no, they're just having coincidental dreams. But it's like, we don't know.
Oh yeah. And dreaming up the possibilities is just so fun,
Yeah.
And it's so exciting to do. Like it really invigorates my life to just be like, oh my God, it could be this, it could be that. Whoa, cool. I'm not settling on any and calling it fact.
Yeah.
I'm just throwing it all around for fun.
Yeah.
And it's cool. Yeah. Dreams are a really crazy thing. Oh, I know what I was going to say. Yeah. Like I forget who, but basically way back before all this stuff, when people would be more connected to themselves, there wasn't all these distractions, dreaming was probably so much more of a thing. And I don't know if it was like Tesla or someone, again, I don't know. I'm not going to say it's fact, but I'm sure plenty of visionaries from the past use their dreams as a tool because it's such a picture into the subconscious. There's so much there to draw from, or people have dreamt up their like inventions in their dreams, or songs, have come to people in dreams.
There's no physical constraints.
Right.
There's no conscious constraints.
Yeah.
That's the real interesting part. When you're able to get into a realm where there's no conscious constraints.
Yeah. That's kind of what I try to achieve, like through meditation, which not intentionally, but I kind of am trying to take away the constraints of my beliefs, yada, yada, all that stuff. What should be.
That was another, thinking about it now, that was another point that struck me about that Second Life virtual reality experience, is the level of this is not possible, of my consciousness saying this is not possible, was drastically reduced.
In what way? Like, what's not possible?
Well, think like if I wanted to say I want to make a keyboard right here. Like I can't just say, wave my hands and go, okay, I've got a musical keyboard right to my left.
Right.
I can't do that in this realm. But in Second Life, I could say, I want a keyboard right there. And boom, it would immediately exist.
What? That's awesome.
Yeah.
No wonder people want to be there all the time.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's like, okay, and then I can say, okay, I want to attach myself to that and play the keyboard, and, I'll play the sound file and it'll sound like I'm playing the keyboard perfectly.
Yeah.
So suddenly the conscious constraints are way lower.
Right.
Like maybe that's why it messed with me a little bit, because it was closer to that dream state.
Right. And if you're tuning into like this world where like it's a way better world because you've got like whatever you want at your fingertips, that kind of like through natural comparison of everything that our mind does, it makes this world way crappier.
In some ways,
you don't have to look at it like, nobody has to look at it that way. But if tapping into that other place is just so much better, kind of like, that one movie that they put out, Ready Player One. Have you seen that?
I've been wanting to see it.
You'd love it. I think it's really cool. Even I loved it, and I'm not into any of the gaming things at all. But yeah, it's like it makes this world kind of less awesome because because the other world's way better. Anything goes. You can create what you want. You don't have to like work for like 2 years to save the money to go get the keyboard that you want. You don't have to. It makes it a funner game, And I kind of try to look at this world as a game as well.
Right. Yeah, and that is a way to look at it for sure. Mm-hmm. We just have a very different set of scorecards.
Totally. And you can play it how you want. And I actually got that concept from Alan Watts, but just that you can play the Joker, you can play the Queen, or you can play, you can try out different things and play those games for a little while and then put them down or whatever.
Right.
But it takes the seriousness out of life because you're just like, you don't have to like put so much pressure. That's what I find. I don't put as much pressure on myself when I'm like, I'm playing this game, it's fun.
Right.
It doesn't have to be super unfun.
Right.
It can be sometimes.
Well, yeah, because you also have to balance out your survival.
Right.
I mean, you've chosen the path of musician/performer, mm-hmm. which I imagine is not the easiest path sometimes.
No, it's not. But I'm, lucky to be able to, like I'm not very profitable. Don't get me wrong. Like right now where I'm at, I'm kind of like basically keeping my head down and trying to build, like understanding that it's a slow process. Like you got to take one step at a time. And actually when I first started into this, I had so many like stressful days. Meanwhile, like I was just starting. No one was even like looking at my stuff at that time, but it just felt like I wanted to be further ahead. I wanted to like have all the things that I know I needed to do either started or done or something. And then what I've, slowly come to realize over the past like 3 or 4 years is like, dude, like you're not getting anything done stressing out like that. Like everything takes time, and it really helps hearing other people's stories because you hear like really amazing stories about people that just took their time and, paid attention to details and really like, I feel like even karmically put their heart and their soul into something so deeply that it just ends up being such a beautiful thing. And it wasn't because it was rushed and because they tried to do everything at once. So I kind of tried to just take my time, and I feel like I'm just doing the foundation, the building blocks. And I think without that, I'd like miss it. You know what I mean? Like if I didn't have all the fun little, grindy things to do, I'd be like, what would I do with my time?
Well, and I bet the fans that you've got are just like, you've earned them. You've earned their respect. You've earned their trust. You've earned them. You really feel like you've earned them as fans.
Yeah, maybe.
And all that. I mean, I think back to my own business, all the work and time that I put into my business, when things go really well, we get like it and it's beyond the money part. Mm-hmm. I mean, the money is, I look at that as a byproduct of the success that you create. Right. It's like when I'm running an event with Tractus and things go incredibly well, there's people using it. There's people deriving enjoyment from what you create.
Right.
That's the best moment.
Yeah.
That's the absolute best moment, isn't it?
It totally is. Yeah.
And
that's such a good on point right there for sure.
And it's when it's being able to have those moments that everything becomes just 100% worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I want people to like feel the joy that I felt when I created it.
Yeah.
And interpret it however and stuff. You're doing all kinds of things, and do you feel like you're kind of in that building block stage and you're kind of watching it grow and stuff?
Oh, definitely. It's growing, like just being able to hire somebody to do programming for me and look at what they make and go and put that in front of a client and have them use it is just like, it still blows my mind that it's, just through hard work, dedication, making some good moves, the odd little bit of luck that I helped create, that these opportunities are presenting themselves.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. I always have this picture in my mind, and I saw it while meditating, and I was probably from a video or something, but just, I always think about like, I'm like walking off this cliff, and I just trust. I walk onto nothing. There's nothing where my foot's dropping, and boom, this like piece of rock instantly is there to support my foot.
Right.
And then I step on it and I take another step, and another rock is under there, and it just continues. I just trust the unknown. And every time I take that step, boom, something comes my way. Like you said, like where the next step reveals itself, or, you know, the right person comes right when I don't know. It's really beautiful. You're just taking action creates stuff.
And it's having that right mindset too. I think back a couple of years ago when my mindset was really all about fear. Of like, ooh, you know, what if this is a gamble? I better not do this.
Right. Yeah.
And then like when I was really waffling back and forth earlier, you know, not earlier in the year, but when I was waffling back and forth about hiring a summer student, so I was like, okay, I'm going to really put my money on the line. I had saved up enough and I was going to buy a new car so that I could, you know, whatever. Mm. And I sat back one night and I thought, well, hold on a second. What are you nervous about? You've been able to make ends meet, plus some, pay off all your student debts year over year. What's to say you're not going to be able to do that tomorrow, a year from now, 2 years from now? What if instead of thinking, better not do that because it's risky, we say, let's do it because I know I can do this.
Right.
I know I can make this work. Mm-hmm. And it's just having those different thoughts. Mm-hmm. I hesitate to call them positive thoughts because they are positive thoughts.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on the better word.
Yeah. You know what? No, I think positive is the right one.
They are positive.
It's not. What I'm trying to avoid is making it sound just like empty platitudes.
Right.
Like when people say, oh, just put it out to the universe and it will come back to you in abundance. It's like, okay, well, you can't just say stuff.
Right. There's something else going on there that's not just a positive thought. Poop, there it is. It's like a trust or something in there too. Like and belief maybe or something. Faith. I know that is associated with like God and stuff. I use faith more as just like believing in the faith. Faith, it describes itself. It is just connotated often with like religion.
Yeah.
Is the word. Yeah.
Well, I had a different experience of faith a few weeks ago when I was running a religious conference. So I got hired to do this, to bring practice to this religious conference. And I remember talking with a lot of folks who had a very deep faith in the Christian beliefs. Mm-hmm. Very, very deep. And what struck me was that, I mean, they were more on the evangelical side of the faith. So, you know, very strong believers. And it was fascinating to listen to the way they spoke, that there were many of them that had such strong convictions in the face of what I would call compelling counter evidence to whatever their claims might be. Right. And it was that they had that their faith was that, you know, conviction in self.
Right.
Like it was such, they firmly believed in something, mm-hmm. and nothing could shake that. Nothing could shake that. And it was from that many of them derived their strength in life.
Right.
I remember walking away from that and thinking to myself, wow, that is what true faith is. Yeah. Is having that personal fortitude, that being able to say, no matter what, I know this to be true. And having the confidence, even in the face of other people's opinions, countervailing arguments, that is your rock. That is the point. That's the point where you start from. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And having the personal strength to believe in that.
Yeah. And you know, you hear about like in relation to going after stuff, let's say, like someone who I admire is like in some ways, not always, but in this aspect of faith and creating things, Conor McGregor, he's a UFC fighter, and he's in my eyes much more than that. He's to me like what words would I look for? He's a huge inspiration, especially in the way of creating and faith in yourself and going against some odds and creating something that may have never been done before. Like he held 2 different weight class belts, and that was the first time that ever happened. First time MMA fighter fought a boxer. He fought Floyd Mayweather, and just basically owning his brand and his self, and calling the shots in a place where everyone who had come before him hadn't. They just went with the flow, and he changed the game, and there's people that do that. And I think that they have a strong sense of self, a strong understanding of what they want, and an intense faith that it will happen. And that's beautiful. I think when I see that, it's super inspiring to me, because there's a lot of silly things that I've bought into about society or what I'm capable of doing and how I'm supposed to do it.
Yeah.
And I love to see people like that really bend the rules, and bend the way things are supposed to be. They change it for everyone. They change society and culture, Well, I'm not trying to say that's what I want to do. I'm just saying it's really amazing to see.
Well, that's what I think you do. I've found in my life, I tend to gravitate towards, I don't want to say counterculture, but people that look at the rules and say, screw that. Mm-hmm. Like, this is not, I can find a different way to play within this.
Yeah, totally.
When I look at my experiences in school, high school, and university, it was all about, oh, okay, here's the rules. How can I play within them that I'm just like right on the edge? So I'm like, I don't want to break the rules, because then I'm a pain in the ass.
Right. Yeah, that's smart. Playing the game.
Yeah, I just want to go right up to the edge and push those limits as far as, and find the loopholes, and just, because that's where you really make the change happen.
Yeah, no doubt.
That's where things are really fun.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah.
It's like, oh, we're doing it. Whenever I hear we're doing it this way because this is the way we've always done it.
Right.
It's like, this is a challenge now.
Yeah.
This is where we can say, okay, well, here's the what if we drop that constraint?
Yeah.
What if we just say, okay, well, you did it this way. Like, I think about so many projects I programmed. Like, I look at Tractus.
You got to tell me what that does.
Yeah. So I describe it as an event app. So you go to a conference or a trade show, seminar, whatever, music event, and you want to look up all the info about the speakers, performers, sponsors, show program. It's all there on your smartphone. The original intent behind it was to track where people had been at a conference. Mm-hmm. And then as I worked on it more, I noticed that I was at a continuing education conference. We were signing people in and out. And as the speakers are presenting their material, I noticed that folks were just on their phone all the time. Mm. And with these speakers going on for an hour and a half talking about new financial regulations, real stellar stuff, I had a lot of time on my hands.
Right.
So I was just watching people tables of just, on their phone for a few minutes at a time, set the phone down, pick it back up, set the phone down. I'm like,
goodness,
they're all on their phones. It really struck me at that point how much people were actually on their phones. And I had noticed at so many events like Mo Monday, Speaker Slam, all sorts of events that I've been to, speaking events, where the MC says, put your phone away because we've got photographers, or, the no photography rules, or whatever, just different ways to get people off of their phones. And I thought, well, hold on. What if we treat the phone not as an annoyance, which is what all these event planners and event organizers were assuming? What if we drop that idea? We say the phone is not an annoyance anymore. And we say that it's an opportunity instead.
Ooh, yeah.
So that's when I went back to my desk, made the version of Tractus that people could download and get the show program and everything. And then that really got my line of thinking down that path of, oh, wow, I can literally say, here's the constraint, and say, screw that.
Right.
And now when I talk with folks at these different conferences about, it's like, well, how long did it take you to make this? And all these different, because it's got a million different features in it.
Right.
And when I tell them that it's basically been me and another programmer, and we basically went from prototype to a product in a little over 2 years, everybody's blown away.
Right.
because we've been able to do what teams have taken years to build.
Wow, cool.
And it's just been through making some really smart moves and saying, well, what if we didn't play by the rules of your typical event app?
Right.
What if we didn't play by the typical rules?
That's the key. Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
So I love my favorite words in the English language are "that's impossible."
Cool.
When somebody says, "Oh, that's impossible," it's like, that's a challenge.
Yeah, totally. That's funny that is a word even I'm thinking now, impossible.
Yeah.
Like it could have just not been a word in our language.
Well, yeah, that too.
It could have just not been a thing that was ever created. But I mean, there's the duality of everything, right?
Yeah.
Impossible.
So it's anytime I hear somebody say something's impossible, I'm like, that's a challenge.
It's like, you rang?
Yeah. It's like, let's see how true that actually is.
What a great quality that is to have, honestly, just to have that inspire you,
Yeah.
I think that's really awesome.
It's led to some really interesting developments in my life too. Like one of the moments where I had one project where I was building this 9-screen display wall. It was just this crazy, it was actually set up in this office, the prototype version. It was 9 42-inch LCD televisions, and we bolted it to a frame made of these steel pipes. It was, I still think the indents are in my carpet, so I'm not getting my security deposit back. That's okay. Probably not getting it back from all the cat scratches in here, but anyway. I mean, the thing was just awesome. But at one point, I was working on this display wall, writing the software that powered it, and I was having trouble getting video to display properly, like motion video. And I was thinking like, oh man, if only I had coded it this way, and just thinking about different ways. And I'm like, wait a second. The people who are looking at this thing aren't going to know about the code behind. Right. They're not going to know about the code. Let's just fake it. So instead of writing a separate plugin for this thing that would display video and decode it and do all the crazy shit that you had to do to make that work, I wrote my plugin, launched Windows Media Player, hid all of the maximize and minimize and all the bars and everything, positioned it on screen above the video, above the display application I'd written, and that's what was used to display video.
Oh, there you go, no doubt.
And it just barely worked. But it worked. It got the job done, and everybody was none the wiser.
Right, yeah.
The people that I presented it to thought this thing was magic voodoo. And I'm looking at it and going, okay, so 98% of what we do on a computer we can fake.
Nice.
This is all an abstraction. Like when you think about the computers that are sitting in this office, all these things are doing is cleverly manipulating a series of switches on and off.
Right, zeros and ones,
which really boils down, like if you look at the switch on this typewriter, that is basically that's a switch in binary.
Right.
It has, right now it's off, so it's in a 0 state. I could flip it on and it's in a 1 state.
Yeah.
So there's no difference between, so all that a computer is a whole whackload of these.
Right.
Just on really tiny scale.
Right.
And when the day I learned that was just when I really realized how a computer was built. That was just like, holy crap. Okay. It changed the way I thought about computing completely.
Right. And so did you go right into school, into programming?
Actually, funny enough, no.
I'm not surprised somehow.
I actually, when I was into computers from a really early age, but I never got it. I actually didn't get into programming until really late in high school. And then I discovered programming through, I had registered for one of the engineering courses where we did some electronics and tore down computers and built them back up, which I had been doing for years by that point. And the teacher pulled me aside and said, I know you're registered for this course, but I don't think you're going to get anything out of it. Like, you're already at such a high level. Why don't you do the grade 12 version of it? And it's got a programming component. You get introduced to programming at least.
Cool.
Like, oh, well. And to that point, I hadn't had the patience for programming. So I was like, fine, sure, why not? And then going through that course, I saw a friend of mine make the video game Tetris just as one of his projects. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. He made Tetris and he's in the same grade level I am. Well, I can make Tetris. Suddenly I was driven to learn programming, and then I saw I got some successes really early on. And I think it was kind of right. I was in the right place at the right time.
Nice.
Because I was able to make some really cool stuff happen on computers. And then from there, I was like, okay, I think I've found something I can latch onto here. This is going to be important in my life somehow.
Right.
Because before that point, I was more on the videography side.
Oh, okay.
I was actually pretty much set. I don't know. It's hard to think of where I would have gone if I had not gone into computer science. Because my other two interests at the time were chemistry and videography, cinematography. I was really, really big into cinematography.
I've always kind of wondered, I'm like, okay, are they the same thing? Like, I know there's like lighting. Are they in charge of basically all that?
Oh, who knows? I'm sure I'll get beat over the head with a baseball bat for like saying, oh, videographers are whatever and cinematographers are whatever. It's basically, I was just into making film.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I was into, the thing I loved the most was just, taking a camera and just interviewing people.
Oh, cool.
That was my thing, and not even doing sit down interviews, but just like shoving a camera and a microphone in someone's face and going, what's your opinion on this?
Oh, that's awesome.
That was
like
so
reporting.
Much fun. Yeah, I love doing that.
Man, I've always thought like reporting and journalism would just be so cool. You know what I mean? I'm just never been like really drawn to it, but just seeing people like out there doing that stuff, I'm like, wow, what a cool, wild, crazy, interesting, fun job. Like you can choose what route you want to go. Like there's MMA journalists that their whole thing is like, reporting on that. Like you can choose anything and just report like crazy. I don't know. It's cool. You're getting the information and you're giving it from the source and giving it to the people. And I think that's such a cool middleman job.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like with working on this podcast, I feel like I've sort of returned to that.
No doubt. Yeah.
Role.
It's kind of like a combo.
I mean, oddly enough, back in early childhood days, and I'm sure my parents have cassette tapes of this. Like I got one of those little ghetto blasters that had a microphone on it. And so I'd play radio announcer all the time with that.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I swear I've even got a tape where I interviewed one of my neighbors.
Oh man, that is so awesome. I love it.
Yeah. I'm sure if I dig up the tape and it's still good, I'm sure it'll be totally cringeworthy and I'll post it online.
You so should. That's great.
It'll be like, oh, we can hear prepubescent Elias talking.
Oh man,
with a super high voice
thing ever. I think it's so cool though, because sometimes kids are peaky, like there's finding these things that's within them, like for me, there I was like not even intentionally writing lyrics all the time, and that's my favorite thing to do now. And then for you, it seems like, and I don't even fully know what you have going on, but this is like a mixture of at least the two things that I know that you did in the past, like interviewing, some sort of ography, recordingography and, computer stuff, and sometimes these things evolve into what we end up doing.
Well, like for me, Tractus is the ultimate project for me because not only did I have the videography background in high school, but I've done a lot of audiovisual productions.
Right.
And I've run a lot of events. So to have an event app that covers off, we're running events, we're managing speakers, we're doing some of the audiovisual, like it ticks so many of those boxes in areas where I've had experience from the past and a lot of times experience where I went, I don't know why this is useful, or I don't know where this is useful in my life, but I need to learn it.
Cool. Like an intuitive feeling about that?
Like a totally intuitive feeling where it's like, I had like learning how to do some cinematography and learning how to do some audio mixing. Like I knew in high school that I was probably not destined for career in audiovisual, let's say. Right. But I still wanted to learn how to operate the audio mixer and figure out like what's dynamic range and how to actually tweak the EQ so that somebody's vocals sound good.
Yeah.
Or doing some lighting design. It's like, I don't know why I know that these skills will come in useful someday.
And I feel like with that stuff too, it takes taking a risk and like trying new things out to kind of have them all come together. I think of like my aunt as an example. She was always just naturally good at hosting parties. And she was passionate about it. Like she loved it. She was good at it. It wasn't like, oh my God, I got to get all these things together. It was like, she just excelled in it at hosting parties, family gatherings, things like that. And she's also a really amazing artist, but she was like doing other things like selling, like boat sales, different things that she had done throughout the years that wasn't art. And then, eventually one day, I'm not even sure how she came to that conclusion, but she ended up taking a risk and started up a painting thing. And then she started teaching painting. And now she's got this booming business where she hosts birthday parties and she teaches people to paint. It's like this. I stopped and I thought, this is like the two things that you've been amazing at as long as I've known you. And here it is in a way that like is pure joy for her. She makes people's lives like, better, and in so doing what she loves. And it's super cool, but she had to kind of open up to that possibility, take a chance and, stay positive and let those things kind of come. And it's evolved. It's really cool.
Yeah. And be open to, so often I see people who are not open to taking those risks, that just go, oh, this is outside of my field of expertise.
Right. Or they take a risk, one risk, and it fails, and that they go right back to what they were doing before, and
yeah.
And I get that. I totally get that. But, if first you don't succeed, keep trying for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Like if I would have stopped doing any sort of speaking after my first Mo Mondays experience, it's like after I got off that stage, I wanted to go crawl and hide in a corner.
That is not easy, yeah.
But it's, after grinding for a couple of years and actually coming up with some material and refining it, it's like, and incorporating all the experiences of my life into that and learning what works, what doesn't, should this flow. I mean, it's taken a long time to build up that skill set, and it's pulled from so many areas where it's like, when you look at my skill set, and I'm sure you're the same, it's like there's a whole bunch of areas where you look at it and go like, why the hell did you go learn that?
Right.
And then it's all it takes is for that one random skill that you learn to come in handy one day and just go, so good. That's why.
Yeah, totally.
I'm glad I knew that.
Yeah. So it's good to always seek and keep pouring stuff into the old brain.
Yeah.
You just never know,
Yeah.
In the most arbitrary ways it can pop up and happen. Yeah.
No, it's crazy what's possible. And something I really am starting to believe, that idea of that nothing is truly impossible.
No, it's so true. And just that, like, it never ends, the things that you can do. Yeah, nothing is, dude, nothing is impossible. Even the most craziest thing we could ever think of right now is not knowing that we're going to keep expanding. You know what I mean? The knowledge that we have. On that note, sometimes I think about how people are getting like really freaked out about AI and stuff, right? And I think this is a thing that maybe Joe Rogan's talked about, but just that I thought about that if we're creating something that is the extension of ourselves, like our body is an extension of our soul, and like our computer is an extension of our mind, and all these things are just more extensions of source energy. Then if we manufacture these beings, that are sentient, whatever it is, and they're an extension of the perfection of what we could be.
Yeah.
I have no issue of humanity. Humanity lives on through that. Even if human form doesn't exist, humanity created it. Therefore, it lives on through another being, kind of thing. I'm like, not that worried about it.
Well, it forces us to rethink what's alive.
True that.
It's like I look at computers and go, the only reason I truly feel that we don't consider computers to be alive is they're not aware of their own existence yet.
Right.
It's like, there's some animal species that we call them alive, but they're not aware of their own existence.
Right.
But I think with animals, they have every animal on the planet has a survival instinct. They're to a certain extent aware of their own existence because they're actively trying to preserve it for as long as possible.
Doing the things,
Whereas a computer doesn't.
Right.
Computers...
Interesting,
That's why I'm not worried about AI. I mean, I'm not worried about AI in the current form being any major threat.
I'm worried about the humans that own them.
I'm more worried about the humans that own them. But we also don't have a machine that is capable of perpetuating its own survival.
Yet.
And being aware of that in some way. Mm-hmm. Like you can instruct a computer, like all the programs on the computer, there's, to a certain extent, you could say some of them have some form of life because as time's gone on, like Windows, for example, it has some mechanisms to detect that it's being messed with. So if you start deleting some critical system files or even attempt to, it'll try to block that attempt.
Right.
And I look at that and I go, you could say that that's just file protection. Right. Or is Windows actually slightly alive? Because it's actively trying to continue its own existence.
Right. And, if it's programmed to do so, then it's no different than our programming, And that's what computers have taught me about life is like, it was like, oh, this is exactly how I work in so many ways. And it made me like become conscious of my own programming.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, there's no difference in that in programming. Programming's programming.
Well, there's no coincidence that computers have been created the way they have, and that they're so logical for us to use. It's like they are extensions of our being. Yeah. For me, they're direct extensions of my being.
Right. I always thought of just like the big gigantic brain, like we're a bunch of connected brains, collective algorithms sending things to each other. Like the more we think of something, the more we bring that into our existence. And like same with like the algorithms, just like these are just thought streams, that are connecting.
Well, the algorithms on computers, not only are they thought streams connecting, but they are thought streams that are made persistent. Like we've been able to say, this is a good way to do something.
Right.
Let's capture that thought for all eternity.
For all eternity? Not to be like...
At least that version of it.
Okay, right.
Yes.
That makes sense.
I want to capture that way of thinking for at least a period of time.
Right.
And be able to look at it and study it.
Okay.
Because you look at when you look at an algorithm, you have the algorithm and then you have the output of that algorithm. Well, you've got the input that goes into the algorithm. You've got the output of the algorithm.
Output being like...
Whatever the result might be. So like there's algorithms that are running in my computer to produce the screen that you see on the screen right now.
Okay.
There's algorithms that tell you, Facebook is the best example. There's algorithms that tell you, oh, here's the people that you might likely be friends with.
Based off of all these things that you did before.
Based on all the input, which is the friends you currently have, the stuff that you've liked, the stuff that you have mutual interests with.
The data.
Yeah. What gets interesting, though, with algorithms is they're really one of the most direct ways, and I'm literally this is just coming to me now. They're one of the most direct ways that we can study a thought. Because it's like, when you think about it, it's like, oh, Christ, why did I do something that way?
Right.
That's really hard to latch on to.
Yeah.
Really, like, why'd you decide to have the kind of tea that you had today?
Right.
Like, when you really think about that, it's like, it's a kind of a hard thing to latch on to. Like, what are the reasons behind that?
Yeah, solid, like real reasons.
Yeah,
what are the real reasons?
The real reasons, and how were they developed?
Right.
With an algorithm, if you consider it to be, we've captured a thought, we've captured a way of thinking. With an algorithm, if we say, oh, Christ, why did it say that person over here is, I'm potentially friends with them, or I potentially know them, like, they're a business person at an oil company. It's like, I'm a musician, this is an oil exec, like that doesn't make any sense. What we can do with an algorithm is say, let's break this down. Let's study it piece by piece and go, based on these inputs that I gave it, we can trace through that way of thinking to go, and here's where it came up with that idea.
Right.
And here's where that thinking might be accurate or it might be flawed.
Right, yeah.
And then we say, well, if this is flawed and we tweak it, what are the impacts down here?
Yeah.
And then just trace back and forward and say, and then have the ability to say, okay, well, this is a pretty sound way of thinking. The way this algorithm works is pretty sound. It gives us a good output. But what if we tweaked and refined it this way? Because I've got an idea and, I want to codify that in the algorithm. And it's like, oh, okay, cool. Let's do that.
So you work directly with algorithms in order to code?
Well, yeah, kind of the other way around. You know what? It is a two-way street. You do, when you're writing code,
oh
you are.
Oh, God, that scared the hell out of me. The kitty just jumped off my lap when I was not looking. Hello.
Okay. Yeah, he does that.
Yep, kitty on the lap.
But yeah, when you're writing code, you are basically writing algorithms of some kind.
Kitty kisses, just saying.
Aww.
Okay, anyways, sorry, say that again, sorry.
When you're writing code, you are writing algorithms generally.
Okay.
Or you're writing a series of instructions, and some instructions turn into algorithms.
Got you.
And then after you've done that, you'll go back, look at what are the results of this algorithm and how do I need to tweak it?
Okay, because you're looking for different results possibly. And that's why you would tweak it, let's say.
Exactly.
On that note, can I say that's so cool too, because when we go in, I'm relating that to kind of how you started that with, it makes, to see it on the outside makes you understand. That's not really what you said, but it helps me understand how I work better in the human brain and the mind and everything like that. And yeah, it's different, but that it's sometimes hard to go inside and figure things out. But to have that external thing, to just hearing the information you just gave me about how an algorithm works, that's almost what I'm trying to do in the whole life hack stuff and trying to be my better self. It's why do I keep ending up in this output, which is this bad decision that I keep making? I keep following the same algorithm in my mind, and all of a sudden I feel like crap because I'm doing this thing that's really bad for me.
Yeah.
And then it's to be able to go back, at least in a computer, the data is a little bit more black and white, but as when I go back in my mind, I really try to take that time and go back and look, what decisions did I make, and how many why do I keep making them when I go to this place? I go to this person's house, I make that decision, or I'm surrounded by this, I make that decision, and to basically go back through and hack my brain to not make that decision next time, and then make a new algorithm towards something better for myself.
Exactly.
Not always easy, but
you're rewriting that mental code.
Right.
You're basically stepping through and tracing that through. Mm-hmm. The fun part about algorithms is it's the first time that we've been able to trace thinking so quickly and so easily.
Yeah.
And in a very visual way. That's where AI is going to get really interesting. Once we're able to go beyond just, what's the best way to describe it? Because we've got,
maybe I'll put this kitty down. Hey.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, I love the kitty, but there's a wire there, so
he's a little rambunctious.
Yeah.
But with AI, it's, because a computer is not able, for the most part, when we're working with code or with an algorithm on the computer, it's generally not capable of modifying itself. In other words, it can't always learn.
Okay.
And if it can learn, it's usually constrained. There's limits on the outcomes you can get from it learning.
Right.
So it's not learning the same way that you and I learn.
Right, but similarly.
Somewhat similarly. If you've got an algorithm that's always going to give you a numerical output, you always know it's going to give you a numerical output. It's not going to be capable of giving you an output that's a letter or a series of letters, for instance.
But could it at first be, and I'm just going here, but at first be all the letters, but all of a sudden there's one, or all the numbers, but all of a sudden there's one letter in there. And then the next time there's two letters and some numbers. And then all of a sudden it turns totally to letters after enough times.
See, that might be possible.
Slow, gradual.
That might be possible once we get AI advanced to the point where it can literally be self-correcting and self-learning.
Right. Like us. Yeah.
Because it's entirely possible, for example, to take someone who's never seen a guitar and give it to them, and within, let's say, within a few minutes, if you show them, I can make this I can configure my hand this way and I can play the C chord. It's okay. They understand the C chord. And from there, they can start to infer that if I move my hand a certain way, I can make other pleasurable sounding sounds. So I can move my hand this way and I'll make a G chord. And if I move this hand this way, I'll make and they can start to, and from there, they can start to rewire their own internal programming to figure out the chords on their own.
Yeah.
Now, we're just starting to get to the point where we have some programs that are able to learn in very specific circumstances. Like there's a couple of really cool algorithms that have been able to learn how to play video games like Super Mario Brothers. Again,
or that one that like beat the chess champion or the Go guy.
Yeah, that one, those were actually, if anything, more constrained. Because there's a very finite, like compared to a game like Super Mario Brothers, there's a finite number of games a finite number of chess games you can play. And with every move you make in chess, you reduce that space by a large amount. Right. Whereas in a game like Super Mario Brothers, you could spend the whole, like if you think about World 1-1, and you played it before, right?
What?
Super Mario Brothers.
Mm-hmm. Oh, World 1-1, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So like the first world that you start on, you could stand there the whole time and let the timer run down to 0. You could stand there the whole time and then on the very final frame, press the right button. Time would still run out, but this time you played it slightly differently. And if you trace back all the different button configurations you could punch in and all the different ways you could move, it's like that's a huge, huge potential space, a huge potential problem to solve, to learn how to play that. And so you've got computers that now are learning how to do that by basically playing the game over and over and over and over and over and over again.
Right.
To try and learn it.
Yeah.
And then by the end of it, they're sort of kind of okay at it. Like basically getting through and surviving. Whereas a pro player would be showing off mad skills. Like I'm going to get the mushroom. After I bounce off this box, I'm going to hit the Goomba and then I'll be able to do a double jump and whatever.
Yeah.
So our computer learning is at a really early stage.
Okay, so then I was wondering, what if this oil company guy all of a sudden finds my account and starts scrolling, pausing, watching all of my videos like super randomly? Let's say his daughter was in his Facebook account and was like looked at my stuff and then found all these like local London musicians. Do you think like the algorithm would be like, whoa, what would it be doing?
It would take that. The algorithm only knows the information that it's being fed.
Right.
So if the algorithm sees, because there's a difference between somebody being signed into Facebook and that actual person using Facebook. So for example, going back to that oil executive, and the perfect example is his daughter. Say his daughter's got his username and password. As far as the Facebook algorithms know, Joe Smith is on Facebook looking up, the universe featuring Ray.
Right.
It doesn't know that the oil exec's daughter is at the wheel. It's got no way of really knowing that.
Right, because it doesn't assume that movements...
Well, all it knows is that somebody had the username and password that matches this oil executive. Mm-hmm. That's all they know.
But then would it switch up his algorithms all of a sudden? He's getting an ad that's like, hey, local indie rock in Texas.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It would learn from that experience.
Okay. And create a new little connector.
Potentially, yeah.
Right, okay.
So that's suddenly how that connection could come to be.
Yeah.
The daughter gets her hands on his account and suddenly it's, oh, hey, it's this person browsed your Facebook page or they liked your Facebook page for some reason. You two might know each other.
Right.
So that's how it might make that connection.
Okay, so then like for like promoting stuff or whatever, let's say, which I've never been interested in trying to work the algorithms because it's just like, again, it's like Twitter. Do I have the time to, is it worth it?
Yeah.
It's just super not for the amount of headache it is. But anyways, if I could like work the algorithms, like, is it safe to say that if I go check, if I want to have my stuff pop up near, these people's feeds, just go click on their stuff or like manipulate it to some extent for my benefit through reach,
Yeah, it's hard to say specifically what will make the algorithm produce a certain result.
Right.
Generally speaking, though, it's getting people to like your page and interacting with those same people on a regular basis is going to will probably make it more likely that those people you'll get their attention when you post something new. Because like, oh, this person likes the page and you two interact a lot. Like, it's more likely than not that they'll see your content.
Yeah.
That's my best guess. I have no idea how the Facebook stuff works.
Yeah. And again, you got to pay.
Yeah. And it is a bit of a pay to play model these days.
Yeah. And I mean, I feel like in the music industry, it always was in a lot of ways. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of people, the further you get into it in, rolling with certain kinds of higher profile people, some stuff reveals itself that like, oh, there are people that, whoever's funding them or parents like lay down a bunch of money or just like write a song for this person and write it and produce it. And then they perform it, which to me is like singing. And that's an awesome path of music you can go down. But it made me realize a lot of things about what's possible, and that money talks,
Yeah.
It's not the only thing that speaks. Talent really speaks too, but, yeah, and you can't buy that, right? You can't buy talent sometimes, but you can buy your way into some stuff. Lots of stuff.
Well, you can trade your way into it as well. I mean, unfortunately, I see a lot of artists that have been screwed over by agreements that basically, and I'm sure you've seen them too, where it's like, this big company owns all of your content forever and you get royalties, but you only get royalties if these conditions happen. And it's just crazy.
It's super freaky, yeah.
But what I feel like the internet has done for a lot of musicians and for a lot of people that create content is if you want to go the hard route and just strike it alone and just build up a community yourself and, self-fund and promote yourself, you can reap all the rewards that you used to have to get a whole crap load of middlemen for.
Right.
Like,
no, it's true.
Like I look at your music videos. I was looking at your music videos earlier and I was just like, holy Christ, these are well produced. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm assuming that you didn't just, go and get megabucks cash to go get those produced.
No, definitely got some deals and some and free stuff even. And I have people who it's good to I think it's, it's important to me to want to work with people who my music has compelled in some way. Like compel is such a special word to me because I really feel like, I want to create compelling content. I want to have action be created through what I take action on. And, yeah, like as far as a couple of like my most professional music videos are, Gata Creative did them, and Ben Srokas, who owns that, he's been such a partner in crime with me and such a huge believer in me and someone who's like lent their talent and their time and away from their family and everything to like really help me with stuff, and it's totally translated and it's really helped. So I feel like that's another thing too is, that's kind of what I try to do is be creative in the other methods, whether it be like to compel somebody. I never try to hustle people into helping me out. I just try to create compelling content or connect with people or co-create,
Right.
Co-creation is a really important thing.
Right. That collaboration.
Yeah. Great things come with connected minds, like so much good stuff.
And the beautiful part is because you're doing it yourself, you own it.
Right.
You have control over your destiny.
Yeah, definitely.
It's not some record label that's off in the ether that owns your stuff forever and ever.
Totally.
And your family has to negotiate the rights for that when you're no longer around. It's like, you own that content. You can do whatever the hell you want with it.
Yeah. And I feel like even sometimes when you click a couple accept boxes, when you go on certain websites, like they own stuff that you don't even know that they own kind of stuff. It's kind of crazy. And I mean, I don't totally know about that or if that's true. I've just kind of heard that in passing, but I feel like it's kind of a slow grow when you do it that way. You spend a lot of time building up your business like anybody does, like you're doing, right?
And you to a certain extent.
No, totally. Yeah. That's what I mean. Like, and I can build up my product to pitch it and sell it to a bigger corporation, like a label or something, who's going to take ownership and provide me with tons of benefits, but also take away some of my, what do you call that? Not capital, but my, whatever, you know what I mean? I'm trying to use fancy business words, but
well, they'll
my
take
equity.
They'll take your equity, but they'll also, but with that goes your freedom.
Right. And I mean, you can negotiate freedom. Or can you? No, but I think you can in the music world. But, and then, you need to rely on people who understand the language, just like, with coding, like the language of law is kind of a crazy thing. And you need someone who really knows what they're doing if you are going to even get into bed with like, business. Well,
then, and you have to be okay with, I look at somebody like you're an insanely creative person. And I think there's a lot of labels that would look at your content and go, oh my God, we need to sign her. She's, got this really alternative audience and, presents this alternative persona. But then once you're in that situation, how much of the control over yourself and the way that you express yourself would they take away?
Right. And
go, well, our focus groups have shown that, the specific tint that you've put into some of the dreads in your hair, they don't resonate well with the demographic that we're looking to target. And meanwhile, you're going, well, frig off. It's how I want to express myself.
Yeah, it's like all of a sudden slicing lines into what and who I am and how it all is, rather than letting things just be what they are, which is the most beautiful state,
Yeah, it's like,
that's crazy.
Or, they'd turn around and say, oh, well, Ray, we think that, the t-shirts you're wearing, we love the design, but, maybe go with one size too small, because that will, our studies have shown that, our videos get much more hits when the clothing is more revealing. And like, if that's not your thing.
Yeah. Shouldn't be forced, that's for sure.
No.
And I think even if someone's like, hey, you have full creative control over your art, super, super great, but I still have to compete with other bands within that label on release times and when the funding would come for this, that, and the other. And I don't even know, because I haven't even got to those conversations yet. But I mean, I did a little bit, like I was discussing talks with being on a certain indie label, and I mean, at this stage, it was just like, there's just no point in that yet. I want to build this as much as I can and build it to where I, possibly one day would want to sell equity in it or whatever. But
sure.
But yeah. I realized like in the industry that there's probably tons of artists out there that have their songs written, recorded, ready to go, but they have to sit on it for like a year because they're competing with other bands on their label for release dates and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Which is a little crazy in my head to think about, because I just always want to keep creating something new.
Well, and the cool part with you is when you maintain that control, it's like if you decide, oh, I want to, I've got a bunch of people and I want to put a concert on or a performance on, you just say, oh, I found this really cool venue like 765 Oldies Bar and Grill or, or the Soho Bar, Bar and Grill in Old South. It's like, I want to put a performance on there. It's like, you're not dealing with a promoter. You're not dealing with, some corporate person who says, well, this isn't the best date to do this.
Oh, yeah.
You can just say, screw it. I want to sell tickets to this event and I want to host a performance here.
I never even thought about that.
and just go do that.
Yeah.
Or same thing with an album. It's like, I want to go, crowdfunding has changed this.
Right.
The crowdfunding's totally changed that whole model of publishing albums.
Oh my gosh, I'm so going to do a crowdfunding.
Yeah.
I need to pay for my new album.
It's like with crowdfunding, it's like, oh, if I get a whole bunch of people, they all pitch in 10 or 15 bucks, I can suddenly pay for the 10,000 that it costs to go into the studio and do this, the mastering or whatever.
Yeah. And like take people along for the ride, even have them be part of it from the, ground up. Like,
and the best part is that at the end of the day, on the business side of me, at the end of the day, you have control over that.
Yeah.
You have the final say over that product that you put out.
Mm-hmm.
And so are you assuming more of the risk? Absolutely. Is it going to take longer to produce that stuff? Oh, hell yeah. I look at my company, I look at Tractus, my startup. There are parallels between this, because like with my startup, I don't have any investors on board. I have taken on minimal debt in relation to what some other startups are doing. Like I had this experience where I visited one of the incubators in Toronto. So there's these places called incubators where you can basically get accepted and get, as a startup, you can get some small business space.
They have that for music too.
Yeah.
Yep.
The music incubators. So you know exactly what I'm talking about. With at this incubator, I walked in and I had my most glorious suit on. And everybody was like, oh my God, is this an angel investor? Is this a venture capitalist? Oh my God. Like everyone wanted to friggin' talk to me because I look like Daddy Warbucks. And I got talking with a couple of these companies and they're like, yeah, we just raised some A class and we just raised some initial seed funding and this. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. How much equity did you retain? And we're like, oh, we got about, 10 or 15%. I'm like, you're working for someone. You're working for someone now. It's like, you don't own your company anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like a bunch of other dickheads who don't know what they're doing now own your company. Like, what are you doing? And I understand that for some ventures and for some people, it's more than just controlling that company. It's about some grander vision, and that fits into it. Fine. I don't want to throw that way of doing things under the bus. There's valid reasons to go and find a label or go and find investors. But when I was sitting there, talking with all these different companies, it really dawned on me. I'm like, I'm probably the only person in here, aside from whoever owns this building, that owns 100% of their company.
Right.
It's like, yeah, is it a tougher road? Absolutely. But the rewards are worth it.
Right, yeah.
That you have the final say. That you've got that freedom to say, I want to get involved with this because this aligns with my personal values. Or this is, like, if the event that I sponsored last week, the Top 10 event, I mean, we had over 1,000 people come through the door for that one. And if I would have turned to, an investor and said, we're going to sponsor this event, like, and legit, I wasn't looking for any cash or anything out of that one. And I legit went to the guys and said, here's my idea. I want to sponsor this event. If I would have had investors on board, they probably would have killed me for that.
Right.
Of being like, you're sponsoring 1,000+ event. Are you friggin' crazy? You should have at least gotten, some at cost, whatever.
Right. Yeah.
But it was like, no, this is something I want to do, so we're going to go do it.
Yeah. That's inspiring. That's awesome.
And so for somebody that's a performer like yourself, it's like the amount of freedom and control that you've got to just say, like, the Universe featuring Ray is holding a performance here at 765 or here at, frig, if you want to crowdfund and get enough cash together to go and rent out Bud Gardens, you can do that. There's nothing stopping you.
It's so smart too, because especially for me, I've always considered myself someone who is creative with money too. Like, with how I want to do things and how I want to spend money in a way that, or do a concert like super avant-garde, maybe it's, who even knows, but just the possibilities are endless beyond what kind of music and art I make. You can be creative in what kind of a show you put on and where it's located and what it's about and how we come together in order to make it be what it is. It can be something that's never existed before. Like the Grateful Dead, they traveled around town to town and did I'm not saying necessarily that, but just that like so much hasn't been done in certain ways. And like, I would be sad to be told how to do those things.
Yeah.
Things beyond the music. I always think creative control, I think like music are, photos, but no, just like how I operate.
Yeah. Or being told it's, hey, guess what, Ray? You're going on tour for the next 4 weeks and here's your schedule. Go.
Well, that sounds super awesome. But I can hire someone to do that isn't my
But is it awesome when you have no creative control over that part where it's like we're doing 4 shows, it's like we're doing 2 or 3 shows in one day. We're traveling from it's like, and they're not places, and they're places where it's like, okay, this,
or like I can't be in a multicolored bus. I have to be in like a gray bus. I'd be so upset. I'd be like, no, it's gonna be my bus.
I'll throw this one out there. If you're in a bus.
Right.
They're just like, no, we're going to fly. It's like you are doing a performance in New York City tonight, and then tomorrow you're doing a performance in LA. well, we can't get you to LA on a bus overnight, so we're just going to fly you out there.
Right. And I'd be like, is the plane multicolored? No.
Yeah.
No, but totally. Whereas like if it was going to be New York, it'd be like, let's make it a music video road party that crosses from Canada into the States and make a video of it and pick people up along the way. And like, it could be anything. It could be so crazy if not controlled by someone else.
Or just be like, hey, we found an abandoned barn and we're going to hold a concert here.
Boom.
You know,
Yeah.
let's just do that. Like when you have that creative control, I mean, there's pros and cons to all this. I mean, one of the cons is that is when you the search space of everything is everything, and that is friggin' overwhelming.
Yeah, no doubt.
Because you can go in so many directions. But at the same time, because think about it this way: I originally I'll take the master's degree I was working on. And I use past tense for a very good reason. I'll let the audience figure out why. I originally had gone on and worked on a master's degree because I need a master's degree in order to publish academic work. In order to contribute to the field of academia, I need to have a master's. They won't accept. I just had this assumption that I could not publish if I did not have a higher degree behind my name. Like I've got an honors bachelor computer science. And I thought, I need more than that to be able to publish. And then 2 years into the damn thing, I talked with a doctor, and he's like, no, you don't need anything. If you've got results and you can back them up with good science, you don't need a damn thing.
Right.
I'm going, well, Christ, why did I assume that?
Yeah, where'd that thought come from?
And then watching other performers who was it? I mean, Louis C.K., he's not a great example because of, the stuff he did to women. Let's use his business sense for a second.
Okay.
He bucked the whole trend of comedians by, instead of having someone else go and produce his special, he self-edited and self-produced his special and sold it on his website for $5 a piece.
Oh, I did not know.
He just did that, self-promoted. He did it all himself. And as a result, made $1 or $2 million pretty much overnight.
Wow.
And he basically kept all of it.
Nice. Yeah, and with social media, you can get the word out, you know?
And
That's smart.
When you look at the way that he ran that, he wasn't hiring a major promotion company to sell the tickets. He wasn't hiring a major production company to do all this. It's all these different systems that we take for granted that we just assume I want to go get an album published. I have to go, find a studio somewhere, and then I have to find a publishing company, and then I have to find a publicist, and I have to find, I have to find all these big corporations that'll do it for me and give up all the creative control at once. Mm-hmm. The day that I published my own music on the internet and realized that I could go to cdbaby.com and get 500 copies of my album pressed. I was just like, what the hell? Who the hell am I? I'm not a musician, and I can go get albums pressed? This is impossible.
Do you have an album pressed?
I don't have an album pressed, but it's I'd released some of my music online a long time ago.
On what? It is ukulele?
No.
Okay,
no.
I saw maybe some ukulele.
I love the ukulele is an awesome little instrument, though. I do love it.
Super cool.
But
Can you play piano?
No, what I did was I discovered there's a program called Acid Music. Have you ever heard of it?
I have.
Yeah, so I discovered Acid Music. I downloaded a whole bunch of loops and then bought some more, started arranging them, and went, oh, what the hell, I'll release a bunch of these tracks.
Cool, I love it.
Yeah, so I released them a long time ago. One of them is actually, one of the tracks, Product of 31, is I use it as the theme song and the outro to this podcast.
Cool.
And I arranged that in 2012.
Nice.
And there's other music. You know where it's come in really handy? Is when I've had to put together tutorial videos, and I've needed something mellow and instrumental, but sounds a bit technological.
That's cool. You can just make it yourself.
I've not only, but I've got a repository of songs that I've made that are there ready to go. And it's I don't have to worry about licensing or rights or any of that
you can
bullshit.
even sell them.
Yeah, exactly.
To other people making content and stuff. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's I don't have to worry about any of that licensing bullshit. It's it's my own content. Mm-hmm. I can just do whatever I want with it.
Yeah. That's cool.
So yeah,
a lot of people are looking for like stuff like that too online for cheap to download for their videos.
Yeah,
there's a whole big business in that too.
That's true. I never thought about the whole providing that content for use in videos.
Key to riches and multiple revenue streams.
Yeah, that multiple revenue stream thing, man. See, and this is why I love doing this podcast, because all the new ideas just come. It's like, hey, I never thought I could actually, like, aside from just trying to sell the albums, just actually monetize it. And you need a piece of music for your explainer video. Well,
it's like,
I've got a bunch of really mellow tracks that would be perfect in the background.
Yeah, you can even just like drip your faucet and record and be like, water dripping. Yeah, sometimes people need that. You know what I mean? I love those.
It's like the number of times when I've had sound effects I've needed, and I'm just like, oh man, someone recorded them and they're selling it for $1.99, and that's exactly what I need.
It's like, I'm going to buy this online rather than just go record my faucet right now. Speaking of which, one of my favorite artists, I should say one because there's so many, but for a while I was super obsessed, was this producer named Hot Sugar. Oh, so amazing. His whole, like, the thing that really got me stoked was that he records like the world around him, and then he engineers the sounds into these like Mozart, like new age music. It's unbelievable. And then you can almost hear these weird sounds, like, and they, I think, hit you on like a level where you feel connected to them. They're not just digital sounds, you know, they're like a door shutting, they're creaking, they're crickets, they're whatever it are. And you can barely tell what they are, but his songs have no lyrics and they're just like really amazing.
There's a guy that's a Canadian artist that's like that. I want to say his name is Ian Tamblyn. Don't hold me to that. I'll look it up and put it in the show notes. He uses a lot of ambient sound he makes music out of a lot of ambient sounds.
Cool, like from the world?
Yeah, like one of the ones was he's recording being on the 401 and just putting the microphone, just recording what the sounds are like.
Cool.
Just in the car, listening to you can hear cars passing and the hum of the rumble of the engine.
And then there's also like melody with that?
There's just enough melody with that it's just like, it just fits so perfectly.
Is it like droney?
I don't know how to describe it. After we're done, I'll pull it up and show you some of it.
Okay, cool.
Like another one is the track is called Departure, and it's recorded at Pearson Airport, and you just hear the sounds of planes taking off and landing in the distance, and the bit of instrumental that he's paired up with it. The whole thing just evokes this emotion of travel and destiny, and it's really powerful stuff.
Yeah.
You know what? We actually used that track. I was helping somebody they were doing a consult for this child that I think he had like separation anxiety or something. And the person I was working with, they wanted to record a simple CD that this child could play for themselves at night to help calm down, because one of their parents was always traveling, and the sound of the airport always brought the child comfort because they associated it with their parent, coming and going. So we used that track as both the intro and the outro to this relaxation track, almost like a guided meditation that we recorded for this kid. And it's not public. It was very custom for that child. And it wasn't
like music therapy kind of.
Yeah, very much.
Yeah.
And it wasn't ever like, we didn't charge for the actual, like, it was a real experimental above and beyond, never charged for it. So hopefully there's no rights violations there with music. I know you're supposed to pay for licensing, but in this case, it was like, nobody was making money off of anything on this one.
It was a mixtape. What are you talking about?
Yeah, basically.
No, but that's cool. And it makes me think too about how like we are like our heart is a rhythm, and like everything is like music essentially, you know what I mean? Just vibrations, and that music therapy has become a really big thing, because I think they're linking the fact that it has an effect on our energy, certain music and the vibrations of it. And have you ever seen that like somatics video where like the guy, it's on YouTube, this dude is playing all these instruments, and there's like pools of water in certain places and like sand in certain places. And every time like a beat hits, the sand will jump into a new geometric, like shape.
Whoa.
Which like, oh my freaking God, is super insane, right? Like the water, obviously ripples are perfect circles that extend out and stuff.
Sure.
And yeah, so it's super insane. It's basically like the visual representation of sound waves. And it's like, obviously we're being affected by that. And the crazy thing is that they're like in geometric patterns, which, you know, makes me think of it's sacred geometry, and that's what everything is, you know, like the fabric of reality.
Yeah. Well, and there's such, well, yeah, exactly. I'm glad you brought up math, because there's such a relationship between a lot of geometric shapes, a lot of music, a lot of math. It's a very logical, it's that beautiful intersection of both logic and emotion.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Of that there's a beautiful logical way to construct music, but then how it can just touch us at such a deep level.
Right.
It's just incredible.
The rate resonates like in our heart and soul. It can be crazy.
Yeah.
It can be really amazing. It can create time travel in our minds. You know, we can like literally go back to a time and feel all of those feelings.
Yeah.
It's like, thanks, song.
I've got I can go back to all my video game music and basically pull up a track and say, here's what was going on in my life at this point.
Oh my God, that's crazy.
Take you right back to it.
That would be a cool video to see, because I bet so many people so many people who gamed throughout their life, because, you know, those are like pretty impactful years, young, playing Sega Genesis, I know like Sonic, because that was like one of the only game systems I ever had was Sega. And
yes,
when I hear those songs, I'm just like, as soon as somebody goes, as soon as somebody does the first line from the Mario Brothers, what is it? Bum, bum, bum. And then like everyone in the room's like, bum, 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 bum,
yeah, everyone joins in. Everyone knows it.
It's like impossible to not. It's just like, it's part of our, like, I swear these things have become part of like our DNA, those patterns, you know?
Yeah. Oh man. It's just incredible stuff to think about.
Yeah.
And there is so much, I feel like there is so much more that we could cover.
Oh yeah, totally. I don't know. How long have we been talking for?
We have been talking for well over 2 hours now.
No way.
Yeah.
I was like, maybe it's been an hour and a half.
No, it's well over 2 hours.
It's the time-space continuum has changed. We altered space-time in here.
We totally, you know what? That's the funkiest thing about doing this podcast, is that every single time, it's like the first podcast I recorded with Greg Horton, I was thinking to myself, I wonder how long we're going to go for. And then I looked down and I'm like, okay, well, we've killed 10 minutes and, you know, maybe there's some more content. And then I look down again and I'm like, wow, we've gone 30 minutes. Let's see how long we can get this going for.
Right.
And then like 2 hours rolls around and I'm going, holy crap.
It never ends.
How did that happen? But there's so much. I mean,
yeah.
I love what we've explored.
Totally. Me as well.
And we got to do this again.
Totally.
There's
good,
no question about it.
Yeah.
Where can people find you?
On the internet.
Social media?
Yeah, all the social medias. It's just like, search the universe featuring Ray, and I'm like the only one out there. And definitely like and do all those things. See if I compel you. And if I compel you, please compel yourself to do cool things.
And you've got some really awesome handmade merch on your website too.
Yeah, I've got handmade merch, and I just redid my website. I'm super happy with where it's at, and
it's so cool.
Oh, I'm glad you dig it.
Your website is so awesome.
Oh, thank you. I had previously made all my buttons out of clay, and it was kind of just hard to redo that whole thing. So I was like, you know what, I'll simplify it and use just a little bit of clay on the website. But
right,
it's cool, just not to get into stuff because I'm sure we could again, but just that mixed with the internet now, with the mixed media, it's like a new mixed media. Like all of a sudden I can take my clay and turn them into buttons on my website, like it's a whole new way of mixed media. It's really cool.
It's so
I love
awesome.
expressing myself through the internet art.
Yeah, it's such you've got one of the most unique websites I've seen in a long damn time.
Oh, so. Right on. So check it out, everybody.
I love it.
It's theuniversefeaturingray.com.
Theuniversefeaturingray.com.
And new music video is out on YouTube.
Yes.
Just search The Universe Featuring Ray, and the song's called Give It Up.
Give It Up by The Universe Featuring Ray. That is awesome.
Thanks.
Ray, you are an incredible human being.
You too.
And I cannot wait to do this again.
Thank you.
It's going to be tons of fun. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much.
And dear listener, we love you.
We love you.
You have a wonderful week. Here comes the outro. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to Let's Solve the Universe. This podcast can be heard every Saturday at lstupodcast.com. For more information about Let's Solve the Universe, head over to our Facebook page, Let's Solve the Universe Podcast, or check out the Let's Solve the Universe website because you know you want to. Complete show notes and information about all our guests can be found there. And I thank you, dear listener, for sharing your time with us. And we'll talk to you next Saturday.